So we are in different parts of the world, so it's an international webinar. First of all, I thank you all for finding time and visiting us today for the webinar. Seeking the blessings of His Holiness Jagadguru Sri Rishikendra Mahaswamiji, I, Dr. Paras, member of SIG Special Interest Group Cariology at the JSS Academy of Higher Education and Research, Mysuru, welcome you to the part 2 of the webinar series hosted by the SIG Cariology. Before we start, I would like to welcome Dr. Ravindra, Principal, JSS Dental College and Hospital, and I would like to invite Dr. B. Nandalal, Team Leader SIG Cariology, to introduce our guest of honor. Dr. B. Nandalal, with his extensive knowledge, has been extensively involved in the academics and research for more than 30 years and leading the SIG Cariology at the JSS Dental College and Hospital for more than 11 years. Now I would like to invite Dr. Nandalal to kindly take over.
Thank you, Dr. Paras. With my humble pranams to His Holiness Sri Sri Deshakitra Mahaswamiji, I would like to convey greetings to one and all. I extend a warm welcome from SIG for Dental Cariology to the participants and our guest speakers of the day. SIG is a special interest group established in 2011 under JSS Academy of Higher Education, Faculty of Dentistry, with a thrust area of understanding, developing, and translating research in the field of dental cariology. On this occasion, we have Dr. Surendra Singh Ji, Vice Chancellor of JSS Academy of Higher Education, as one of our guests of honor to invite the speakers and the participants. Thank you, sir, for being here with us on this virtual meet.
Thank you, Dr. Nandal. It's a pleasure. Thank you.
And sir has been at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, and he has also been in charge of the Drugs Control of General India in February 2008 and continued to work in the same position till 2011. And sir was also the director of National Institute of Biologicals, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India. And he has also been involved with the state government of Punjab as the chairman in the expert committee. We welcome you, sir, again.
Thank you, Dr. Nandal. Thank you.
So we also welcome Dr. Kushalappa, Director Academics, who has come and joined this occasion, and he has always been inspiration in this SIG groups. I also welcome our panelist, Dr. Mahalakshmi, Professor Head, Department of Conservative Dentistry, SRM Dental College from Chennai, and also Dr. Lata Anandakrishnan, Associate Dean, Department of Pedodontics, MS Ramaya Dental College. We hope this meeting will take the like-minded researchers with a special interest in cariology along with the JSS team and move forward for initiation and representing India on a global map. We are also had welcomed some of the members of the IADR as well as Dental Cariology Global. Let us now begin the much awaited webinar inauguration and the opening remarks from our guest, Dr. Surendra Singh. Sir, please take the lead and declare the webinar session open and give the opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Nandal. So at the outset, I declare the SIG Dental Cariology webinar series open. It's a great pleasure and I think it's an honor for me to be amongst these webinar series, which are going to be like, I think it is one of the, in the series as such, which is there. So at the outset, I would like to congratulate Dr. Nandlal and the Principal Medical College, Dr. Ravindra, and their entire SIG team for having taken up this initiative. So with these words, I once again wish a very good afternoon to all of you and a good evening to Dr. Albert and a very warm welcome from JSS Academy of Higher Education and Research. And I also take this opportunity to convey the blessings of His Holiness Swamiji. Just to take you through the journey of our JSS Dental College and Hospital, I'd just like to share with you that this is one of the constituent college of our JSS Academy of Higher Education and Research and has been very active in the academics, research fronts, and also catering to the oral health care in this region of the country. It has its own credentials that it is also seeking a lot of grants from other funding agencies in our country like DST, SUB, ICMR, pharmaceuticals industries, which shows the the level and the scale at which the research activities are being taken in this our dental college and hospital. It is also one of the well-recognized centers from apex bodies like DCI, ISO, NAC, and NRF. And I'm very happy to share with you and very pleased to say that the dental colleges, they were ranked for the first time in the country, what we call as a national institutional ranking framework. And this was the first time the ranking was done for the dental colleges, and GSS Dental College and Hospital ranked 20th in the country. As a part of best practices of the institute, this has been recognized for special clinics of infant oral health clinic, mother oral health, breath healthy, and cleft lip and palate multi-specialty free service for the society. And this has also got in place an oral health outreach program since last 20 years for about 3,000 residential school children in a rural setting, which is about, I think, 30 kilometers from here, under the health village model, which is a dream of our Honorable Chancellor. Additionally, our GSS school-based oral health care for children with speech and hearing impairment at residential school, it has been it is a wonderful blend of our learning and service for the dental professionals of our institutions, and also for the visitors from overseas who come over here under the student exchange program. They are quite impressed with the type of work and type of engagement in which our department is involved over here. We have also constituted in our university special interest groups, which are basically having an interdisciplinary approach. And as I said earlier, I'm very happy that this webinar, international webinar, has been arranged for dental cariology under the leadership of Dr. B. Nandlal, who is the team leader for this cariology group, and other members of the team would also be speaking over here, like Dr. Pratibha and Dr. Anita would also be part of this. They are part of this webinar over here. And this webinar and series has been very aptly, I think Dr. Nandlal is very innovative with the words also. So he came out with and coined a very special caption for it. CarioInnova, that is innovation to manage dental caries. And now I've been working with Dr. Nandlal for almost 8 months. I always find that he always brings surprises. He always has something up his sleeves and comes out at the last moment and takes everybody by surprise. So it is the time these global concepts, they reach across to the different regions of the world, and we look at the newer approaches and understanding the disease and provide quality care for the dental conditions. I'm very glad that we have got a galaxy of international speakers who will be speaking in this webinar, and our faculty, our students, and the various stakeholders, and those who are actually involved in interdisciplinary approach, they will be benefited by the domain specialized expert knowledge of our international speakers and also speakers from within our country also. Among the first of the series of the international speakers, I feel it's an honor for us that Dr. Albert has taken out his time and joined us today from Korea. I was, like Dr. Nandlal, I was wondering whether he's from he's in Netherlands, but he's in Korea at the moment.
At the moment.
And, so
he works in 2 places, yeah.
So he's a founder of technology of imaging using QLF for Inspector company. And last time when I was interacting with Dr. Nandlal, when I visited his department, when I recently joined, so he said that we are one of the beneficiaries of your technology in the country. And as he shared with me, there are only 2 labs, and Dr. Nandlal's lab is amongst one of them. His department is one of them. And I'm very happy that Dr. Albert has visited your department also, Dr. Nandlal. And your team had a privilege and opportunity to interact and be benefited by his expertise. The another speaker is Dr. Kaushik Mukherjee, who is a research assistant in the University of Minnesota School of Dentistry, USA, who will be joining us. Then Dr. Prem Srinivasan, adjunct faculty from Rutgers University. And he's a scientist from the Colgate University from New Jersey, USA. And he is the one who was instrumental in bringing to JSS, especially Dental College and Hospital, to be one of the research centers with Colgate International in the Asia region. And I went to Dr. Nandlal's department and saw the publications which have come out of this collaboration, which is very heartening. The another speaker is Dr. Stephanie Russell, who is Associate Professor, Department of Appendix Epidemiology and Health Promotion. She's from New York University College of Dentistry, USA, and I think we'll be looking forward to hearing from her. She had also visited India, and she had inaugurated the unique oral health delivery system and the baby oral health clinic at pediatric OPD of JSS College. This was to reach the young mothers early with anticipatory guidance, and this is an excellent initiative which has been taken. I also understand they have been associated with, like all the speakers, at one point of time or the other, they all have been associated with our JSS AHR research groups, both in academics and research, and as well as in calibration and training of JSS team in neodental technology. So I express my profound gratitude to all the speakers who are taking out time and will be amongst us for like joining hands with our team at our dental college and hospital and doing hand holding for them. I welcome once again all of them, and I also welcome our panelists, Dr. Mahalakshmi, Professor and HOD, Professor in Conservative Dentistry, SRM Dental College from Chennai, and Dr. Lata Anandkrishnan, who is an Associate Dean, Professor in Pediatric Dentistry, Ramaiah University of Applied Sciences from Bangalore. And I hope this webinar will have a fruitful outcome and will come out with a stronger plan, much more robust and much more dynamic plans what we have at the moment, and will help in establishing a national group which is focused on thrust areas of dental cariologies. So with these words, I once again convey my best wishes for the success of this webinar, and we look forward to now hearing from Dr. Albert. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Right now, we have more than 300 participants on board, and the numbers are increasing. For those who are joining us now, I welcome you again. Moving on quickly, we have today 4 international speakers with us today for the presentation, for each presentation lasting up to 45 minutes each. Participants who have any questions during the webinar, just type them in the Q&A chat. At the end of each webinar session, we shall post it to the panelist. First, I would like to introduce Dr. Albert De Jong. Dr. De Jong graduated in physics in 1981. He, in 1986, completed his postdoctoral comparison of mineral quantification methods to assess the mineral content in tooth enamel and dentin with incipient caries lesion at the University of Groningen, Netherlands. In 1987, he was co-founder and became the director of company Inspector Research Systems in Amsterdam. In 2006, Dr. Jong was appointed as an honorary research fellow in Professor Ingham's laboratories in University of Liverpool, UK. The first product sold by Inspector Research System was transverse microradiography, which became a gold standard in the field of caries research. As chief research officer, he invented and developed the method called quantitative light-induced fluorescence. QLF became the internationally recognized standard to assess incipient caries lesion in vivo. I am happy that Dr. Albert has accepted our invitation to share his expertise in artificial intelligence in dental imaging. I now request Dr. Albert to kindly continue the webinar.
Okay, thank you very much for your kind words. Thank you very much, Professor Nantlo. I hope everyone understands me, can hear me.
Sure.
Thank you very much for inviting me to this exciting web meeting. As you know, Dr. Landau, I am very glad that I visited you in India 1 year ago. You introduced me to delicious foods and beautiful palaces and stuff. And yeah, really have a very warm feeling about all those kind of things. And I hope we can work together in the future. And I know you have a lot under your sleeve. We heard that. And let's do something together. But first, I will try to do some presentation here. It's the first screen 2. It's the first time I did a Zoom situation. Let me see. So my name is Albert de Josselin de Jong. I'm Dutch. But I also travel a lot in the world. Actually, traveling is a thing I really like. I love other cultures. I love Russia. I love Pakistan. I love any country in the world. and I wish everyone in the world to be healthy. We are a very special kind of life, and I think that's a godly thing. So, let me see. Yes. This person here, can you see that person?
Yeah, yes.
That's me.
Oh.
Yeah, that's me like 30 years ago or 40 years ago. And I was dreaming about a healthy world and about a happy world. And I went into dentistry because I had very bad teeth, actually. So my teeth were not good. And I thought maybe I can do something right by fixing my own teeth. It's in my opinion, you have to be happy to make other people happy. And I had bad teeth, and I thought maybe I can do something with that. And actually, I'm obsessed by optics, always been. So I love playing around with cameras, lenses. I made my own camera obscura in my home with my father, so I could see the street upside down in my own room. That was fantastic. Yeah, I rolled into this dental business, and what I noticed was that there was a lot of plaque in the teeth, but I couldn't see it. And actually, I spent about 30 years to make plaque visible, as you can see here in those two images. Actually, we know that plaque and the oral biofilm is a very dangerous item in our body. And some people say that the most important organ of the body is the brain. But I think the most important part of the body is the oral cavity. It's the portal of our body. Everything what we have in our body comes through our mouth. So yeah, all the diseases have a big opportunity to come through the mouth. And we know from COVID-19, it's also coming through the mouth. So anyway, the disease is originating from biofilm, from plaque. And it starts actually making gingivitis, and then teeth and bone get dissolved. We get periodontitis. And yeah, all those diseases like heart disease and Alzheimer's disease and respiratory diseases, they all have some relation with this gingivitis start. And the wound, so in ACTA, they told me that the wound of such a periodontal wound is about 12 square centimeters. It's not just a small one, and it's an open wound. So if you don't feel it like that. So when I was 21, I had these kind of diseases, and I didn't know I was actually terribly ill. Now I'm old and almost 70, but I'm much younger than my brother and my siblings. And I think it's because I took care of my teeth. I know that's N is 1, but I think it's very important that you take care of your own teeth. My teeth are terrible. They don't look very nice, but they're very healthy. So yeah, the biofilm is number one importance in our oral cavity. And that is why I focused on biofilm already long. And it started with quantified light-induced fluorescence, which we originally developed to find out about caries, but later we found that it was also very useful for detection of red fluorescence of plaque. It's a very simple method. You use blue light, a special blue light, that's 405 nanometers, which is very close to the ultraviolet, but it's not ultraviolet. It's still very healthy. It is not, how I say that, like alpha or beta rays. It's not harmful at all. We use that blue light to shine on the tooth. And inside the tooth, a fluorescence phenomenon happens, especially at the dentine enamel junction. There, a greenish yellowish light comes out. So it's like a lamp inside the tooth, coming out of the tooth. And that reaches the eye together with the blue light, of course. And also, if we have plaque inside or outside the tooth, we have some red fluorescence coming to the eye. But normally you don't see anything of this because there's too much blue. So only if you take away the blue light, the incident light, then suddenly you see another kind of image, and that makes it so clear to your eye. So, yeah, what do we really see in Yonsei, where I also work? So in the list of things I do, so I work at Yonsei University in Seoul, and I'm very happy there actually. We have like 25 PhD students there, and half of them are doing a PhD on QLF, and they all try to find out things like erosion, like cracks in teeth, like health of elderly people and things like that. And one of those students was occupied with making artificial biofilm, microcosm they call it, microcosm biofilm. And that you use your saliva of one person, and they can let it grow like plaque in the mouth. And as you can see in this image here, after 2 days, the plaque gets red with fluorescence, and it gets brighter and brighter and brighter. So the older the plaque gets, the brighter red it comes out with. And in the mouth, as you can see in the next image, in the mouth, we can see the red fluorescence, that red plaque stuff, coming up after 2 to 3 days. So we cannot see young plaque, we can see a plaque which is older, and that plaque is pathogenic, as was found by many researchers until now. And well, biofilm can not only be on the surface of teeth, but it can also be penetrating inside the teeth, like approximal in approximal caries. Then the biofilm, if it's old enough, starts to glow red inside the tooth, and that's all the things we can see. And the red fluorescence is caused by porphyrin, and if you look it up at Wikipedia, you can see that it's some chemical stuff which fluoresces also red, and that is a byproduct of this biofilm. So you don't see it directly, but indirectly, so to say. So this is a typical example of a white light image and a fluorescence image, and you can really see that the fluorescence image shows plaques much brighter, much clearer than white light does. And also, this is the image at the beginning. If we have a tooth with some initial caries, then if we cut it into two, we can see that this red fluorescence, that these porphyrins go all the way down to the pulp. So it's not just a surface effect. No, it's really, if the tooth is ill, if the tooth has caries, deep caries, it can go all the way down the pulpa, and the pulpa itself can be bright red as well. So we plan to put it in microscopes later, actually. So I work together with a company, IO Bio. That's a company in Seoul. That's the place where I am right now. So I also do some fun work with that company. Life is fun, you know. The older you get, the more fun it is. And I would suggest everybody never retire, never ever retire, because if you retire, then it's finished, you know. It's not good. I really think so. So Professor Nantlo, please listen to me. Okay. Anyway, at IOBio, this is a group of people very enthusiastically making new and exciting tools. They also are interested in AI. They are interested in computers. They are interested in LEDs. And soon they also will produce 3D kind of imaging systems, which also include QLF. So yes, we're working hard on it. And with these tools, the dentist can make images in the clinic, and images like this. So this is an image of left that is plaque, typical of a person with brackets, and also the tongue. If you have some smell, then usually there is a big amount of plaque on the tongue. And that is shown like a big red lumpy tongue. And here are some images of proximal caries. As you can see that, especially in this one, you can see that red fluorescence really glows out of the tooth. And they found out that it has a very good relationship with X-rays. So bite wings and QLF really work together well. So that is all very positive and very nice. Caries. So in the left case, we have a lot of caries, and you can see that red fluorescence is rampant all over the place. And you can see that in the right side images, that secondary caries is also well visible with QLF. So the tooth or the elements really glow red around the fillings if they are leaking. And yeah, that is quite exciting, I would say. Cracks. I'm not sure how many cracks there are in India, but in Korea, many people have many cracks because they eat nuts and they have very hard fish. It's a very smelly fish, actually. I don't like it very much. They call it hungo. But if you eat it, it's like eating a rock. So and if you have an amalgam filling, you get cracks, and also with other kinds of fillings, but predominantly with amalgam fillings. And they are very difficult to see, even if you have a lamp swung from the side. And with QLF, you can see cracks which are like a month old. You can really see the crack in red lines, right? Red bite lines. So, okay, that was the introduction of the system. And now we will go to the automatic things. So I'm interested not only in the visualization of the phenomena in the oral cavity. I want to analyze it. I want to calculate it. I'm a physicist, and I want to follow people in time. I want to follow myself in time. I want to know, am I getting better or worse? So we need to quantify things. So this was a plaque image, a white light image. This is the fluorescence image. And what I made was a system to actually calculate automatically this plaque coverage. And it took me 2 years. But I will show you in very fast. I can go in 2 minutes. Actually, the most difficult part of this whole thing is finding out where are the teeth. And you might think that's very easy, because we can easily see where the border is. A human eye with brain is so imaginably clever that we can see much better than a computer. To tell a computer that this are the edges of the teeth, well, it takes a long time for him to learn. However, once the computer knows how it works, it can do it a trillion times faster than the human brain. So once you taught the computer how to do it and he starts to understand it, then you can actually make things like this. So this is a mask. And I used like 500 teeth to make this algorithm. So you cannot do that just with one tooth or something like that, one image. No, you have to do it with many images, because yeah, in nature, nothing is the same. And yeah, I developed an algorithm to automatically find the plaque, the red areas on these teeth. So actually like that. And where the blue gets brighter, where it's getting to cyan, I made the color more red. So there, the plaque is more thick and older, probably. And what I did was making a hygiene score. So I used the ACTA, where I worked at that time. I asked them to collect a lot of images, varying from no plaque to a lot of plaque. And I divided that in 6 categories. And I made a simple hygiene score. So if you take an image like this, you can ask the computer to calculate it. And in this case, the plaque score is number 5, which means actually that the patient in this case is not brushing very well. And not brushing very well means that the dentist can say to the patient, if you come back in a month's time and you have the same kind of image, the same number, then I will have to take off the brackets because these brackets are producing white spots. So you can use this automatic algorithm to show patients how things work. And of course, you would be able to use such things at home, but not yet. Tongue plaque analysis. The plaque on teeth, on the tongue varies a lot. I am more like number 3, so I collect a lot of plaque. I don't know why. I don't like sweets very much, but still I do that. I like beer, by the way, but that doesn't produce so much plaque, I think. Anyway, you can see that some people have no plaque at all and not many halitosis, and some people have a lot of plaque on the tongue. And the thing is how to calculate that. So there's a Professor Winkel in the Netherlands, and he made a sextant. He made 6 areas on the teeth. And he said, please measure the red fluorescence in all those 6 areas. So that is what this does. So we have an average area or an average red fluorescence of 72. The maximum is 100. And the coverage is 71%. And A78 means that this is the average red fluorescence in that sextant here. And this will give you a value, a quantitative value of the tongue coverage and the tongue severity. Tongue plaque coverage severity. And so how do you do that? At this moment, we have to do this manually. We make a contour of the teeth, and the computer can calculate automatically these sextants here. And currently I'm working on an algorithm where this is done automatically. So you make an image of the tongue. You could do that at home, just like with plaque. And then the algorithm can give you a number. And for patients at home, you have to give very simple numbers. I am aware of that. You cannot give too much. But this is a start to do that quantitatively. Just checking, is everybody hearing me well?
You're clear, Professor Albert. We are able to hear you. Perfect.
Okay, so yeah. I will continue.
Yes, sure. Yeah.
Okay.
It's going good, yeah. It's going good.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's good to have some feedback. Please stay there, Mr. Professor Novo.
Yeah. There are a large number of people listening here.
Okay.
I know you like to address live. You enjoy live teaching better. I know that. Yeah.
Yes, live. Yeah. You know, live is the best thing we have, and we are the most unique part of the universe, I think.
True. We are using total AI, artificial intelligence.
Right. Correct. Yeah. But we have a duty. We have a duty to take care of our children. That's why I'm here too. I'm not only for my own joy.
Yeah.
That is not. We should take care of everyone. Anyway, incipient caries analysis. That is the thing I developed in a very early stage, and I will not go in too much detail. But it's possible to analyze early caries in the mouth, on the teeth. And you can give numbers to it. And we're planning to give simple scoring system like simple hygiene scores. So a dentist can can see that from a distance. Also, this could be done from a distance. And you might wonder where the colors come from. This is Korean barbecue. And I was having Korean barbecue with Korean soju, they call it, that's alcohol. My brain was very bad at that moment, but then I thought, hey, it looks like burning caries. So that's when we made the burning thing. It's all pseudo colors. Secondary caries analysis, that is a thing which I developed last year. So here we have an amalgam filling with some secondary caries. What you basically can do is make a patch or a contour around it. And the computer calculates the original sound surface and then subtracts it. And then you can see the secondary caries and calculate it. Anyway, this is all fun. This is actually the prelude to what we actually want to do. And I think the 2020 disaster, the corona disaster, has a big effect on oral health. And, you know, what happened was that in Korea, actually, and also in the Netherlands, and I am not surprised if that would have happened in India as well, the dental clinics closed. So at the first month, all the dental clinics were closed. Yeah. And nobody could go to a dentist. And there was also limited freedom of traveling, especially for the old people. So yeah, and then there's, so all that in Korea, everything went better. So everything went much better, and we can travel around, and the clinics are open again, but only half of the patients come in. And why is that? Because they are afraid to go to the dentist. They are afraid that they will get the virus at the dental office, because they know that the virus comes through oral. And they are not aware of the fact that the dentist really knows how to treat that. So a dentist knows how to treat HIV patients. They already know that, but the patient doesn't know. So that's so the dentists all over the world are afraid of going to the dentist, and maybe in India it's different, but I know that in the United States, in the Netherlands, and in Korea and Japan, it's all the same like that. So yeah, the oral health is declining. You can bet on that, because the dentist has a big effect on dental health, I'm quite sure, on the oral health. So we have to go to home monitoring. That is a sine qua non, I think. We cannot go around it. So we have to think of care at home, or at least diagnosis at home. So this is a little device which has been developed by IOBio. It's called the QA Scan Plus. And this you can use by yourself or by your parents. And you can watch in the mirror and you can see how well you brush. So this is a nice start. You could use that actually in home imaging. So if you would put a camera inside, you have a white light image and a blue light image. And actually you can send that to a web server. And then this web server can send it to a dental professional. And the dental professional can analyze it and say to the patient, you have to brush. And then he says, brush, and then tell me, send me it again. And then you can see that the dentist say, okay, you are a good patient, so you don't have to come now. But he can actually follow patients over a remote distance. And the interesting thing is, you can put all those images in the cloud. You can make big data of that. You can make all those images into a big database, and you can have a learning system which starts to recognize all these phenomena. So this is just an example of Plaque, but I think it can be used for many other things. So in this case, we put all those images in the database, and if we also would be able to make images occlusally and lingually and buccally, maybe We can find out more with artificial intelligence, like brushing problems, halitosis, gingivitis, caries. The world is endless, actually. Maybe cancer, I don't know. And that, of course, goes to the dental professional, who can actually, from a more remote distance, can tell the patient what to do. He can say at a certain moment, now I really think it's a time for you to come to me, because this is the end point. But it's all in initial stage. So it's like prevention, but from a remote part. So I would like to end with future in automatic technology. And yeah, there are many things we're working on right now. That's tooth cracks, gingivitis, and approximal caries. So we are making algorithms which do that automatically. And yeah, we're working on systems which you can easily collect plaque at home and do some basic oral health screening. So that's what we're working on right now. But yeah, the possibilities, and I hope Professor Nandlal, with his tricks, knows more things to do. I know he has many things in his head, so maybe we can do some fun things in India. That's really what I think. So I would like to end my presentation here. This is a drawing which I made when I was 21. I wanted to become an architect.
Oh.
Yeah, so this is completely different, but yeah, I still like that paper, that image. Okay, thank you very much. I'll say it in Korean, 감사합니다.
Yeah, I'm sure it has been a very enlightening, hearing directly from the founder, the creator of the technology and the thing. And of course, the other models have come later, which I don't think they have these features which you have made it possible. And I'm sure I would like to share our JSS experience in continuation to this quickly, but we are running out of time. I don't know how many slides I would be able to show.
Yeah, thank you.
Dr.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Albert. It was great hearing regarding the AI in dental imaging. Now I request Dr. Nandlal and Dr. Raghu Shanbhog to share the JSS experience.
Yeah, please, Shanbhog first. He can quickly go through the few JSS experiences and what we have to give to our colleagues. Yeah, Shanbhog, please.
Yes, quantitative light-induced fluorescence is an internationally recognized standard to assess incipient caries lesions, and also is a promising technique to assess the presence of bacterial activity. Our JSS Cariology research in JSS Dental College and Hospital has equipped with QLF-TM Billuminator device with the Q8 1.26 software from Inspector Research System BV, Netherlands. This particular equipment is been funded by DST SCRB and JSS AHER. The faculty members of SIG Cariology had got trained for both in vitro and in vivo use of this QLF. Also, our SIG Cariology is a certified center in India for QLF training and research by Inspect Research System Amsterdam. In relation to dental cariology, in our center, we have developed methodology evaluating mineral loss in primary and permanent human enamel samples subjected to chemical demineralization by QLF in comparison with International Caries System ICIDAS-2. We have assisted and completed many D and demineralization based in vitro and in vivo studies using pH cycling and QLF models. These are the few of the published works which we have carried out. Also, some of them are funded by the government funding agencies. Presently, we are exploring the use of QLF technology for dental fluorosis and other similar pathologies with hypomineralizations. We are also providing consultation services for oral care product industries using these particular models. We are also planning to run the certificate programs on QLF fluorescent imaging technology in caries-based research using human enamel and similarly QLF fluorescent imaging technology in plaque-based research. This will be a 2-day certificate course for researchers, and the students can take the advantage of this. Also, our team leader, Dr. Binandlal sir, has extensively working on these particular models. So he will further share his views on this. Over to you, sir.
So this is our facility at JSS Dental College and Hospital. We have a laboratory setting, we have a mobile van setting, we have a lab where we study the biofilm and study the changes of the biofilm in an experimental model. We also have catered to the various facilities and extended the facility to various universities in India. Some of the research students do come to us, and we learned this as Professor Albert beautifully explained, that we can see the old plaque. In the old plaque, we can see the. It was not very easy, you know, to do this. It took a long time to standardize methodology of, developing a demineralized zone and going forward with the remineralization. Yes, as there are always been challenges right from the traditional way of studying dental caries in the incipient lesions, like from microscopic level and visible clinically and cavitated form. But how is this possible? Is this possible to do assessment so frequently for monitoring? The amount of the time and the appointment day requirements and scheduling the visits is not easy. So imaging would be the main thing. This is just a small story about me. Way back in 1985, when I came to this organization, there's a place at Ooty. I was made to focus myself into academics and research. Thanks, Professor Albert. I still feel I should learn more and I have to do research more. This is where I started, where I was advised by the founder that I should be in academics and go forward, and from 1989. And this is where at the age of 58, I still was learning with, and that from you, your technology during your last visit, it was very interesting to see the newer products which were launched, which you just said now, that Q-Ray Cam and Q-Scan, and making it more portable and easy. And this one was quite impressive. You can do home care assessment. A patient can just capture an image and see whether he has brushed enough, and it can be transferred. I think you were talking last time that we are going to connect this to transfer images as well, which we monitor. And the pen type was very interesting to wear with the eye shield and take care of that. And of course, this was after our online training of 1 year, when your visit was there, that helped us to move forward in a bigger way. And of course, Professor has explained the technology. When the light emission is filtered, the blue light, and we can see the red light, and the red light in the place of in the caries, based on the porphyrins which are present, give this color, and they are giving the blue color in the case of plaque. And as rightly said, if the bacterial presence is there in the caries lesion, that red and yellow colors have been chosen. Rightly chosen, and to help both for home care as well as for the professional to know where he needs to prepare. So I had an opportunity to present some of our works, how this can be a tool in assessment, education, motivation. And yes, traditionally, this is what we have been doing all these years. You know, nobody likes to have this painted in the mouth, and it is going to take long time to reuse the various indices and keep recording, and it would take at least 1 hour or maybe more if it needs to be re-evaluated by the supervisor to see what one is scoring. So the clinical indices are the golden standards. I'm sure the periodontists are listening here, and cariologists as well. But everybody will agree, whether you record caries or plaque, the clinical way needs a supplement. It needs a supplement, because when you need to monitor monthly basis or 3 monthly or a 6 monthly, it takes quite a bit of time, and today is the time of documentation, and hence we need to have an alternative. Of course, photography method has been tried in the past, but this QLF, I think I'm quite impressed as well, because I had have experience for the last 3 years working on this unit, and I found it is definitely a supplement, and it would take us a long way. I don't want to explain the indices. We did compare with the various periodontal, plaque indices, and we found the time taken, we almost finished the analysis in a very short time compared to this other indices. Yes, for monitoring, yes, if you are doing a research study, it would be different. For regular clinical monitoring, which general dentist would spend time to start scoring like this in a private clinic. It's not just possible. It's just not possible. It is good for an academics, but in a clinical setting where you need to prove, you need to recommend a product is working or not, we cannot sit and do all this for a long term. Though we may have a digital, even the prosthetic denture, to do a scale, analysis, we have been trying to evaluate using this QLF. So these various results, good golden standards. Not that we don't like them, we still need them to create a database. But however, we need something for the patient. Patient does not understand so easily all these and numbers. So to have an evidence base, we thought we should really, of course, Albert has developed this algorithm. When you look at it, you'll say, let me not better understand this. It's quite complex, but thanks to Albert, he has made these algorithms. He says, it will take me just a few minutes. I will change the algorithm what you want. He just made a promise last time because we were trying to think of other things, and then now he has come out with a tongue analysis. It is great. We look forward to do work there. So now coming back to, so this is a beautiful, as he said, he did show us, the professor showed us the applications, but now I'm trying to show you exactly how it works here in some of my cases, which we have been treating, me, Shanbog, and Department of Periodontics together in the various internal projects. And this is a white light photography, and this is the green light photography, that is a blue light photography. And it's a clean mouth, so the score came 0. But look at this, it gives us, after we have tried to do both methods, disclosing and without disclosing. This is another case where we see the disclosed plaque and we can see the score 5. Yes, we had a question. These scores are quite higher than what you give clinically. I'm sure many of you have that. 5 score is too high, but that's what it's reading. They are considering it gives the total and it gives a sum total by an algorithm. Now look at this. This is again a good, well-maintained arch. The score is 2. So we believe this equipment is working. It is not just an index is created. But I had a doubt, I really had a doubt whether we could really get a simulation of what you clinically score and what would you achieve by an image analysis. And I was very surprised and amazed about seeing the scores are very true. Similarly, I think this is again a score of 5, and we get that different zones, how severe these are. I will show the last table there. And here is again a clean mouth. Just a small speck over there, and it does not give a error factor. So here again there's a 5, but then there was a challenge here, as you can see. I asked Professor Albert, there is some bacteria lying on the mucosa. What do I do? He says then you can do a cropping. There's a I did not know the tool before, because when it was online, then when he was here, he helped me know how you can cut off this unnecessary patches, which are also bacterial in nature. That means there is a lot of biofilm sticking over there. So for a moment we thought, what's wrong with this image? And yeah, am I correct? Am I talking sense? So these were the challenges which we had. And again, we mastered over it and we could take forward. Now here you can see there is a slight change. If there is any error of any kind, you may get 2 readings. So you can always take 3 readings because of every time you repeat an image, sometimes some of the plaque would get moved away. And the biobacterial changes. So if you give some time and repeat 2-3 times, you may get, but you should take repeatedly at least 2 or 3 images, and then you take the average. Am I okay? Am I audible? Yeah.
Yes,
So these were the 5 cases which we have presented here. That is score of 5. It's called plaque score, SPS score of 5. And this is what Professor Albert said, that he has created a scores from 0 to 5. So, and we can see there's a red zone. Red zone is the red fluorescence. It has got a different levels, 30%, 70%, and 120%. We can see that there is a high percentage of, we can see here in the score 5, whereas when it comes to the 2, the fluorescence is decreasing here. Okay, and very interestingly, it also records the tooth area, the amount of area which it is covered. It is just not the score. We also know the amount of plaque spread over the area. That is quite interesting. And I don't know, the algorithm. I read this in a plaque calculation. The divide, take it, and then you can measure the area spread. That's very interesting and challenge. So now some more presentations here. Then we said, okay, we understood plaque now. old plaque, or, refrain from brushing early morning. Then I said, can we apply this and see after oral prophylaxis, or if a patient's oral hygiene? So this is before oral hygiene, and this is after oral hygiene. Sorry. So we can see the change after the brushing. Sorry. So similarly here, score 5 becomes score 1 after simple oral hygiene measure of brushing with a 1000 ppm toothpaste for 2-minute brushing. But here there was a challenge. You see that if little bit is left also, score was still there. So what will, I said it's good, it's fine. If that is because second time, if any left out is there, is it that there's some memory of, or whether it is because of, even this score would have given a 5 score because of the bulk and the thickness as you see here. And so it will help to motivate the patient to to brush better again. So he goes and brushes again. And one more thing is, we cannot just depend on the score. Then professor says, please look at the red fluorescence. The percentage would have been lower. So though the score is 5, you have a tool that is 30% and 120%, and area. You need to look at that, and if that is sure, then the score would be only a motivational tool for the patient, and you depend more on the fluorescence. So we decided to go by that. So here also again, high fluorescence. Then after, patient has not brushed properly. After brushing, still it is very bad. He has been a very rapid brusher, and he comes back. Of course, the decrease is, though the score remained 5, these were some of our challenges I would like to share with the professor. But then, however, the area and the amount of fluorescence decreased, as we can see here. Here is a beautifully well practiced, a patient has followed a good oral hygiene practice, and from the score 5, it come down to 0, as well as similarly the area as well as the fluorescence has come down to almost 0. Another case. So this is what I said, pre and post evaluation, it can be done in such a quick way. We don't have to spend 2 hours before you do a scale, you do a pre-operative index scoring for at least on half an hour, I would say it takes. Sorry, excuse me. And then again, after he performs the oral hygiene, then you can, you have to spend another 1 hour. So this is really a beautiful experience. So it reduced overall time. I think there is some studies, some of the authors have said that it reduces the time of chairside time, 50% of the time, and we can really monitor, educate, and we can see better, and we can understand, and the patient gets motivated, and he follows it. I would say one more experience I had, that was about the QLF experience. I have also tried, before we started using the inspector QLF, we had another model of a dear company. I had tried to do a study, what happens when the caries is beneath the sealant. And I have some experience with this also. I would like to share this, Albert. So it's a small, just another few more slides. So here, this has a different principle. The caries is having, according to the different colors, it has got a different indices score from 1 to 1.5 and all that, whether it is initial caries or a deep enamel caries or initial dentine caries and all that. It is the same feature which now is, we had this model first before we could take QLF, but now we are doing work with inspector as well. And so what we did was we did an evaluation at baseline before sealing. That is initial caries, white chalky white appearance was still present. You can see that pre-op, and then after the sealant, and after 3 months, we did try to evaluate whether there was a progression of caries or not. So similarly, you can see there was a grade score 1 and 2 of initial caries present, and after the sealant, and after 3 months, this study was carried forward for 6 months, and we found that the idea was we wanted to do a comparison of a sealant and a varnish applied, left for 24 hours or 48 hours, 2 groups, and then we applied the sealant. So we wanted to treat the enamel first with the fluoride, and we did this, and we also found considerably it was QLF would help us to monitor this. So this was one of our experiences. So with this, I'm sure we need to know where we are going. The modernize, that's my second daughter. We was very impressed about, are we going to go into covered up into this and move around in the next few years? This is in the city of Ooty. I'm sure these type of, there's a person sitting inside there and they're going around. So thank you. So Professor, I thank you for giving us this learning platform, and I'm sure we look forward to share our knowledge in future with our other cariology experts in this country. And thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah, very nice presentation, Professor Namdal. I'm afraid I really have to go. They're waiting for me. So
Okay.
I have to go. So sorry.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was a very lovely experience. I would love to do it again. So I will hear from you, right?
Dr. Mahalakshmi would like to say something because she's...
No, thank you. Thank you. And it's a pleasure meeting a person who's actually co-invented your QLF.
Thank you, Professor.
For me. Thank you so much.
Have a great, thank you. Yeah, so whether, Dr. Prem, we can see you here. Welcome to JSS Academy of Education and Research platform of this international webinar series. We welcome you. We also welcome Dr. Lata Anandakrishna, who is just, who's our panelist and for this particular session has joined. Welcome you, Dr. Lata.
Good afternoon, sir. It's a great initiative by you. We've heard a lot about your work in cariology, and now that you're talking so much about QLF, it's very welcome move to in India. I recognize good work when I'm seeing. So I wish all the best for this.
Thank you. With all of us team together, we should go forward and see things. We can be one of the people, one of the team from India trying to do this kind of work. Yeah. Thank you for coming today. I think Kaushik is to join us. I think it's too early morning there. Also, Prem has already come there, or Prem Srinivasan sir is already there, Professor. So,
thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, welcome.
I request Dr. Mahalakshmi to moderate this session.
Yeah, good evening. I'm here. And welcome to Dr. Kaushik, and really appreciate you by waking up early in the morning and being there for us.
Thank you.
And actually, I would like to thank Dr. Nandalal and the principal, Dr. Ravindra, for inviting me, because this one topic which you're going to present is very close to my heart too.
Dr. Kaushik has completed his PhD in craniofacial biology at Herman Orthro School of Dentistry, Southern California University, and he has continued as a postdoctoral research associate there. Currently, Dr. Kaushik is a research assistant at University of Minnesota School of Dentistry. Dr. Kaushik has got many patents, and he is working a lot on biomineralization. And to name few, he has got so many high impact publications in Journal of Dental Research. This is the most sought after journal in dentistry, as all of us know. So at this point, I would also like to invite Dr. Mahalakshmi to moderate the session. Ma'am completed her post-graduation in conservative dentistry and endodontics from Government Dental College, Ahmedabad in 1986. Since 1990, she is active in academics. She has more than 50 publications to her credit, and majority of them are in high impact journal. She has authored a textbook in materials used in dentistry, and the second edition of that has recently rolled out, and it's a very popular book among the students. She has got so many funded research from DST, which is up to around 35 lakh as a principal investigator. She has organized various national and international conferences in the field of conservative dentistry and endodontics. She was president of Federation of Operative Dentistry of India for the year 2008 and 9. She is also a reviewer of major international and national journals. She is part of so many international and national societies in dentistry and endodontics. So now I would like to ask Dr. Kaushik to continue with the webinar session now. Over to you, Dr. Kaushik.
Yeah.
Well, welcome, Kaushik. Welcome, madam, again for the afternoon session. Please, Kaushik, please, over to you.
Yes. Can you see my screen now?
Yeah, we can see. Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right, thank you, everybody. Firstly, I'd just like to thank Dr. Paras for the introduction and Dr. Nandlal for extending this invitation. I'm a very proud alumni of JSSDC. I graduated in 2011, and it's always a great feeling to come back to your roots. So thank you so much. I believe we are on a timeline, so if I go over the time limit, please feel free to stop me. My presentation for today is entitled Enamel Biomineralization and Biomimetics. And this is a tissue that we routinely deal with every single day of our lives. And really, enamel for me is such an exquisite tissue. It's the hardest mineralized tissue in the vertebrate body. It can last a millennia unless attacked by dental caries. It is only a few millimeters thick, and yet till today, with all the advancements in tissue engineering, we have nowhere come close to replicating tooth enamel. So I'd like to start with sharing my story of tooth enamel. After I completed my internship, my first project as a master's student was actually looking at the differences in structure and appetite interaction between mutant amelogenin that causes amelogenesis imperfecta and a wild type, which is the normal amelogenin. And we looked at variations, and that is something that really ignited my interest for tooth enamel and enamel matrix biology in general. So coming to the microstructure of tooth enamel, nature doesn't make any mistakes. Every small detail that is ingrained in enamel, there's a reason for that, even though it's just a few millimeters thick. It is made up of carbonated hydroxyapatite, almost 97 to 98% by weight. And the fundamental organizational units, as we know of enamel, is enamel prisms, which are bundles of hydroxyapatite crystals. And just till a few weeks back, we are still learning about the structure and composition of tooth enamel. A very interesting paper was published in Nature looking at the compositional variations, the chemical gradient of tooth enamel. And it is important because only when we understand the structure, we can understand function and look at ways to regenerate tooth enamel. Terminologies like remineralization and regeneration are used very loosely in the enamel field, but honestly, no one has ever regenerated tooth enamel yet. So what you're looking at is, if I take your attention to image number D, this is a longitudinal cross-section SEM image of murine molar enamel. And if you look at the variations in the crystal layout, I've roughly divided into outer enamel and inner enamel. So in the outer enamel, we see that it is aprismatic. It does not have the typical rod-interrod architecture. Whereas inner enamel, you see this beautiful decussating pattern. And there's a saying in biomineralization: structure determines function. The outer aprismatic enamel renders mechanical strength to the tissue. It is impervious to bacterial challenges, enzymes, and comprises of these perpendicularly stacked crystals of about 16 to 45 microns, which over a period of time is worn away. And if it's not worn away, then as dentists, with all our acid etching, that's the first layer that we sacrifice. But it is a very important layer. And the inner enamel, with all these rod-interrod microarchitecture, we see these curved crystal layouts. They actually helped in dissipation of forces to reduce stresses. And that's why enamel, being the hardest mineralized tissue, it should be brittle, but it's also tough. And this is like one of the major challenges in biomaterial science, to handle toughness and hardness side by side. And enamel does precisely that. It's not just the structure of enamel. When I mentioned in the previous slide, each enamel prism is formed by a Tomes process. And it is the morphology and the movement of the ameloblast that helps in laying out the rod-interrod architecture. But within enamel, just like other biomineralized tissues like bone, there's a structural hierarchy as well. And again, in the field of biomaterials, we look at structures like enamel, bone, or even wood to gain inspiration for designing novel biomaterials with enhanced mechanical properties based on their structural hierarchy. So if I take your attention here, I'll take you from your right to left. This is a scale that spans from millimeter all the way up to nanometer scale. So you have, enamel has this typical keyhole configuration, which are enamel prisms. Within each enamel prism, you have these crystals, which are extremely well organized. And again, just a few months back, we are still learning that even within bundles of enamel prism, there are variations in the orientation of the crystals. For the longest time, we thought most of the crystals were aligned along the long axis, which in imaging we call aligned along the C axis. But there's so much difference within the difference that it's amazing, So in the field of biomineralization, there has been a lot of heated debate about the role of transient mineral phases. Why is it important? No one really knows. But again, when it comes to replicating mineralized tissues, it is important to know how they are formed. While the end product is carbonated hydroxyapatite, the precursor phases like amorphous calcium phosphate play a very vital role. Apatite doesn't form right away. It goes through these series of precursor phases. In bone, ACP was diagnosed way before enamel. In the breakthrough paper by Biniash et al. In 2009, they specifically identified the presence of ACP, amorphous calcium phosphate. Its role in enamel biomineralization is still questionable. People can speculate that this is a more moldable form of calcium phosphate, more fluidic form, which allows the organic macromolecules like amelogenin or other enamel matrix proteins to direct their growth to form linear chains and arrays so that more organized crystals can be formed. But this is a very hot topic. If I show you this image on the left, this is a histological image stained by toluene in blue. You have the outer enamel and then you have the inner enamel, and you can see the variations in the color. What is interesting here is the corresponding TEM images, transmission electron microscopy. This is a very high resolution images to study crystals. Electron beam typically passes through these samples being less than 100 to 200 nanometers. And the images that we get can be used to study crystal structure, orientation, crystal defects, etc. So just to simplify this slide, what we see here in inner enamel, the green box, you see these rings which are which represent SAED, selected area electron diffraction. And these electron rings correspond with that of hydroxyapatite. So we know inner enamel is more mature, the crystals are more crystalline, they're more well-defined. Whereas in outer enamel, the red box, we don't see these diffraction rings, which represents either these minerals are amorphous or they represent some other calcium phosphate phases, or they're just more poorly crystalline. So this is just to give you an understanding about how the enamel biomineralization takes place. More recently in PNAS, a very interesting paper was published. Now there's the concept of pre-nucleation clusters, which means that even before amorphous calcium phosphate, there's another complex that forms. And these pre-nucleation clusters are stable complexes which fuse together to form these linear chains. And in the presence of macromolecules like amelogenin, they form these beautiful parallel arrays that helps in organizing crystal growth. So now coming to my topic, which I have been working on, amelogenin. Now, amelogenin is the major enamel matrix protein. And like all proteins, if we look at the primary structure, you have the two N terminals, which have a very important role in guiding crystal orientation and nucleation. And you have a middle hydrophobic core, which is responsible for the self-assembly. The reason why this is important is because, like I keep saying, structure determines function. Any mutation, even if it's a single point mutation where a single amino acid is replaced by another amino acid, can drastically affect the structure of tooth enamel. And that is what we see in certain forms of amelogenesis imperfecta. Now, amelogenin is amazing in a way that it can self-assemble into a host of different structures. It forms these linear arrays, it forms nanospheres. It is important to credit that my PhD supervisor, Dr. Janet Aldock, was the first to coin the term nanospheres. And now we know that amelogenin probably acts as a spacer between crystals. These spheres are about 20 nanometers thick, and when you look at the distances between the growing crystals, you see 18 to 20 nanometers. So it gives us a sense that it acts as a spacer between forming crystals. And more recently, Dr. Habelis in UCSF showed that amelogenin can also form microribbons. So now people are looking at different models, nanospheres or microribbons as templates to promote enamel regeneration. Now, all these assemblies are seen in bulk solution, but what happens when they come in close contact with hydroxyapatite, which is what happens in nature? There's constant mineral protein interaction. So when they studied that, they looked at a different model, which was the disassembly or shedding of amelogenin nanospheres, wherein when nanospheres come in close proximity to apatite surfaces, they break down into smaller adsorbents. So you have much smaller monomer dimer-like structures. And it is these assemblies which are the functional form of amelogenin. We don't really know what is the role of these monomer dimer oligomer adsorbents, but we now know that these are the functional form of amelogenin in vivo. And of course, the best way to look at the function of amelogenin is through animal models. Here we have the wild type and WT, which means the mice carry the amelogenin gene, and then the KO, which is knockout, in which the amelogenin gene has been knocked out. And this gives us an idea about what happens when amelogenin is removed from the body. If we look at the mandibular incisors, you can see it has a smooth appearance. And in the knockout model, you see severe attrition, it chips easily, and it has a knobby, roughened surface. And when we look at the cross section, you can see this beautiful decussate pattern in the wild type, that is the mouse having the amelogenin gene, which is completely compromised in the knockout model. Not only is the prismatic pattern lost, the thickness of enamel is reduced, and thirdly, the mechanical properties, the hardness and modulus is severely compromised. So this is just to give an idea about the important role of amelogenin in enamel biology. Coming to the defects of tooth enamel, enamel defects typically start as a white spot lesion marked by subsurface mineral loss. It was very interesting to hear Dr. Albert speak, because as part of our translational study, we too are using QLF. So it's really exciting. I haven't shown any images. It's still unpublished. But it's a very interesting way of looking at lesion depth, lesion volume, etc. More recently, the NIH and NIDCR, and I thought this was important for all clinicians, they have put in a lot of stress for non-carious cervical lesions. In fact, there was a full R01 grant that was out 3-4 years back, where they were encouraging researchers and dentists and biomaterial scientists to come up with novel restorative materials for class 5 lesions, simply because there's so many challenges in there's lack of enamel, salivary contamination that affects the longevity of restorations. So one of the faculty members who actually secured the grant, I work in his lab right now. While most of my time is dedicated for DDS, I take out some time to work on collagen biomineralization. And he's uniquely working on, again, peptides, which I'll not get into, to address class 5 lesions. So as we are moving towards the concept of filling without drilling, preventive dentistry is taking a central role right now in our dental practices. And a lot of studies have gone into looking at hydrogels, dendrimers, scaffolds, peptides. I mentioned fluoride because it's still considered the gold standard of care, but it is important to understand that remineralization and regeneration are two very different things. Regeneration entails improving addition to the surfaces, improving organized crystal growth, improving mechanical properties. And that is something that we are trying to achieve in our lab based on our understanding of enamel matrix biology. So coming to the actual experiments, when I first joined the lab at USC in 2013, one of the postdocs, he was working on this translational field. So what did they do? They took the full-length recombinant amelogenin, incorporated it in a chitosan hydrogel. And this could actually help stabilize these mineral clusters into linear chains. And when this hydrogel was applied on sectioned human molars, you could see the organized growth of oriented apatite crystals seen represented here by the black arrows. And you could also see a seamless continuous interface between the new layer and the underlying enamel. So this was a very interesting finding where we used proteins from nature to help regenerate outer or superficial tooth enamel. In terms of mechanical properties, there was a twofold increase in both hardness and modulus of treated layers as compared to the control samples. So this was very interesting. It was published in Acta Biomateria, but we know recombinant proteins can be expensive. So the next question was, what can we do to look at ways, look at alternatives for amelogenin? Are there any peptides that can substitute full-length amelogenin in nature? And that brings me to my first aim. There's a peptide called leucine-rich amelogenin peptide. It's the smallest splice product of full-length amelogenin. And essentially, it just preserves the two end terminals of amelogenin, which are responsible for containing most of the functional domains. So my role was to see if air wrap could be incorporated in the chitosan hydrogel to rebuild an enamel-like outer layer and to characterize its mechanical properties using different techniques. The way I went about the material and methods, we sectioned sound human molars with no defects, created these enamel windows, and covered the rest with cavity varnish, and subjected it to acid treatment to mimic caries lesions, and applied a drop of that peptide gel on the surface of the enamel window. So you can see here the timeline. We demineralize it, we apply the gel on the tooth surface, and we keep it in artificial saliva. And then over a period of time, 3 days, 7 days, we observe changes in crystal growth, morphology, and evaluate its organization, and eventually, of course, the mechanical properties to determine how durable are these crystals on the surfaces. So this is just an example of the air-wrapped chitosan treated sample after 7 days. This is the top view. So you can see that the surface of demineralized enamel has been completely coated with fine needle-like crystals. In fact, here you can see tendency of crystals to fuse together into smaller bundles as well, which over a period of time after 14 days forms a robust growth of new crystals. I call it broccoli-like appearance. You can actually see how these crystals has been fused into bundles, and each bundle is about 5 microns. It is, I don't like calling it prism-like appearance, but it appears these crystals fuse together into bundles, and they have a robust attachment to the underlying enamel. If you look at the side view here, these are, this is the new layer that has formed on underlying enamel, and you can see a seamless interface between the two. We usually sonicate these samples in a water bath for 10 minutes to ensure that all the loosely bound crystals are removed. So only the tightly bound crystals are visualized under scanning electron microscope. Okay. Once we've characterized the crystal morphology, I use another interesting technique called SEM-FIB, focused ion beam. So what we do here is it's very similar to SEM. We use heated gallium ions to mill the surface. So this is a surface of the newly formed crystals. We mill the surface around the area of interest, and then there's a lift out process. So we lift out a certain area of sample. We make the sample as thin as 200 nanometers so that it can be visualized under transmission electron microscope. And this is just a video showing that process. You can see this is a tungsten needle which attaches to this sample after it has been milled, and we pick it out, we thin it to less than 200 nanometers, and then we can actually study the crystallographic orientation under transmission electron microscope. And this is what it looks like. This is crystal lattice. What you see here is the boundary between an individual newly formed crystal, regrown crystal, and underlying enamel, native enamel. And at atomic scale, at nanoscale, you can see a chemical bond forming between the two. This is the interface where you see a sudden deflection between the crystal lattice. So this is important because under SEM, we do see a robust interface, a seamless interface, but this is for the first time we showed at nanoscale, at atomic level, a sound interface between the two. Once we have looked at the crystal structure, morphology, the next thing that we try to address is how organized are these crystals? Are they just randomly bound to the surface, or do they have a structure? Do they have a pattern? And for that, we use X-ray diffraction, which can be used to study mineral phases, as well as crystal orientation. So what it essentially means here is the graph A is demineralized enamel, graph B is enamel surface treated after 3 days, C is after 7 days, D is after 14 days. The bimodal peak that you see here is characteristic of apatite. So we know that what we are growing on the surface of human molars is actually hydroxyapatite. What is interesting here is the OO2 peak. As the period of mineralization advances, we see a sharp, we see a distinct OO2 peak, which means that there's an increase in the orientation of the crystals. So these crystals are not randomly organized. They have a preferred orientation, and that is being mediated by LRAP. And lastly, what we want to address is how durable are these crystals. For that, we use Vickers microhardness test. You can see here that this is sound enamel, then we have demineralized enamel. This is the control sample with just chitosan gel, no proteins. The green one represents chitosan with the full-length amelogenin, and the yellow chitosan hydrogel with LRAP, which is the smaller amelogenin peptide. The takeaway here is that both full-length amelogenin and LRAP can significantly improve the microhardness of surface-treated layers, recovering almost 85% of the surface microhardness. So that was very encouraging for us in terms of translation. But the next question was, LRAP is a 60 amino acid residue. It preserves the two N-terminals of full-length amelogenin. Can we then start designing even smaller synthetic peptides that doesn't contain the full sequence of the N-terminals, but just the active functional domains? So that led me to so this paper was published in JMR, and that led me to my next aim, which was to design even smaller, cost-effective synthetic peptides and examine their potential to regulate biomimetic enamel growth, act as an effective substitute for natural peptides, that is full-length amelogenin and LRAP, and see if it can still regulate the structure, composition, organization, and mechanical properties of the newly grown layer. What you see here is the outer aprismatic enamel, and I said it has an important role in mechanical function. And I'm addressing it here because we'll see it is virtually impossible to think of replicating the rod-into-rod architecture, but could we repair superficial enamel and in a way form a prismatic enamel layer on the surface? This is just a slide to look at the rationale for the synthetic amelogenin peptides. I mentioned they have the two N-terminals, a middle hydrophobic core. And the way I went about designing these peptides is I looked at the active functional domains. So for example, in the C-terminus here, we retain the last 12 amino acids that have an important role in promoting crystal nucleation and oriented growth processes. We preserve the residues from the inner N-terminus while keeping the phosphorylation site at serine 16. So these are post-translational modifications in proteins that are very important for controlling crystal morphology and mineral phases. And that gave us the first of the, our first synthetic peptide, P26. We've also seen that residues from the middle hydrophobic core can help in promoting the elongated growth of crystals. So we preserved 2 polyproline repeat motifs from the middle hydrophobic core, and that gave us our second synthetic peptide, P32. So in all future references, I'll be referring to P26 and P32, which essentially mean peptides that have been designed from full-length amelogenin. And these are 26 amino acids and 32 amino acids. Our first role was to see, okay, after we've designed these peptides and we have the primary sequence, what do these peptides look like? We use techniques like circular dichroism to look at the secondary structure. We see that these peptides are intrinsically disordered, which also means randomly coiled. In nature, biomineralizing proteins are randomly coiled. That gives it the flexibility to assume different conformations when it comes in contact with different triggers, for example, calcium. So these peptides are essentially randomly coiled under CD or circular dichroism, but they have a tendency to self-assemble into nanospheres. As you can see in the TEM image here, it has been stained with uranyl acetate. I mentioned in the earlier slide that while proteins form these assemblies, when it comes in contact with charged surfaces like apatite, they break down into smaller self-assemblies. And that concept is called disassembly of amelogenin. So when we actually looked at assembly on the surfaces of hydroxyapatite, we noted much smaller adsorbents of only 4 nanometers to 5 nanometers, in contrast to the self-assembly in bulk solution, which was similar to full-length protein of about 20 to 24 nanometers in dimension. Once we had looked at the structure of these peptides that we had designed, our next question was, how does it mediate mineralization in vitro? And for that, we had 3 samples. One is the control with just calcium phosphate, then calcium phosphate incubated with P26 peptide, and calcium phosphate incubated with P32 peptide. So in the control samples, within 25 minutes, we see the formation of this transient mineral phase, amorphous calcium phosphate. You see spherical structures, which on aging after 24 hours forms larger crystals with well-defined crystal edges. But they have a very random size distribution. There's some really large crystals, some really small crystals. In contrast, the calcium phosphate solution incubated in the peptide showed the presence of fine lamellar-like amorphous particle after 25 minutes. There was a definite increase in the density, which indicated the peptides promote crystal nucleation. And then after 24 hours, we see crystals that are much smaller in dimension, but they have a uniform size distribution, which indicated that these peptides promote crystal nucleation, but they also control crystal sizes. And this is just Raman spectroscopy corroborating the TEM data, and the distinct peak shows larger crystals, the smaller peak shows smaller crystals as seen in the TEM. Coming back to the translational aspect, we now wanted to see when these peptides are applied on tooth surfaces, what does it grow? So this is after 2 days. You have the demineralized enamel, where you can see the enamel rods. You can see the control sample treated in just artificial saliva. You can see porosities. Right here, there are cracks. And then you can see samples treated in P26, P32, the 2 synthetic peptides, and the ones treated with full-length amelogenin. What we do see is there's a robust growth of fine needle-like crystals covering the entire surfaces on samples that have been treated with peptide. And these crystals have a dense packing and they are organized. So this was the surface view seen after 2 days of mineralization. What we wanted to evaluate next is, what about the thickness? So this is again a control sample after 7 days of mineralization. This is a side view. We do see the formation of a new layer, but under high resolution, we can see that it contains defects such as voids. It is ill-organized, and there's a complete delamination of the new layer from underlying enamel in the control samples. By control, I mean just plain artificial saliva, no peptides. In contrast, samples treated with the peptides show the formation of a new layer, and on closer inspection, we can see there's a seamless interface between the two. The crystals are perpendicularly stacked. They seem to be better organized. We subjected them to acid challenge to see what happens when we etch them. And on acid etching, we actually saw that this new layer comprises of smaller sublayers. Very similar to outer aprismatic enamel, you see these perpendicularly stacked crystals, one on top of the other, whereas the integrity of the interface remains intact. So we call this an epitaxial type of growth, where new crystals develop nucleate on the surface of pre-existing crystals, and amylogenin peptides act as a mediator in promoting the organization of these crystals. Of course, we wanted to look at the mechanical properties, and for that we did nanoindentation, which is a more refined technique looking at the hardness and modulus. And there was again a 2 times increase in the hardness and modulus of samples treated with peptide. There was no significant difference between P26 and P32, so we just went ahead in future experiments looking at P26 peptide, which is the smaller of the 2 peptides. And this is just an example to show you that how in nature we can gain information from enamel matrix biology and replicate surface enamel. This is actually an image of aprismatic enamel in nature. You can see these steps. And the image here is that of our synthetic enamel that we regenerated in the lab. And this is just a schematic to show applying the peptides on the surfaces of native enamel helps in crystal nucleation, perpendicularly stacking of crystals, and through an epitaxial growth with repeated peptide applications. This is something that I forgot to mention. When you repeatedly apply the peptides, it helps in promoting crystal growth one on top of the other, and it is very similar to the outer aprismatic enamel. And this was published in ACS Omega. And this is just another example. It was published in Nature, how other biomaterial scientists are deriving inspiration from tooth enamel to improve the quality of their biomaterials. What you see here is zinc oxide nanowires embedded in polymer matrix. And they grew these multiple aprismatic-like layers with the primary design of improving load-bearing biomaterials. And this is the last of the segment that I'm talking about. I mentioned that we are designing peptides that are inspired by amylogenin, but in nature, in vivo, it is way more complex than that. We have enzymes like MMP kallikrein, which are continuously chopping away these proteins from the enamel matrix so that the crystals can undergo volumetric expansion. So the next challenge was, can we then start adding in a timely way enzymes like MMP20s that can cleave the protein and help improve the orientation, growth, and expansion of the crystals? And I just want to draw your attention to the last image here, number 8. You can see here that there's a significant improvement in the organization of the crystals when MMP was added in a timely manner, and that was verified with X-ray diffraction. And there was a significant improvement even in the nanoindentation, the hardness and modulus of samples that were treated with amylogenin and MMP20. The idea being, we are trying to come as close to nature as possible. It's obviously a challenge. Enamel matrix biology is very complex. The pH is constantly changing, the temperature, the ionic concentration. So what we try to do here is treat it with amylogenin, chitosan, and then introduce MMP20 to chop away the protein, provide space for the crystals to grow, and it helped in regenerating more refined crystals, more crystalline crystals, and enhanced mechanical properties. And this was published in JDR. So just to give you an outlook, this is a section of human enamel. You have the enamel rod structure, then you have the DEJ, which is where enamel and dentine come together, and you have the underlying dentine with tubules and laced by collagen fibrils. DEJ has always been an enigma. It would be really amazing if someone could actually rebuild the DEJ. What we do know from proteomic analysis that the two major organic macromolecules that are present in the DEJ are amelogenin and collagen. So our next hypothesis was, could we then use this to treat superficial or peripheral dentine defects? We have seen that collagen mineralization, and I'm not going to go in depth, this is literally the last of my slides. The PILB strategy, using PILB to mineralize collagen fibrils in bone and dentine, we can see it stabilizes these transient mineral phases, ACP, that can infiltrate the water-filled compartments of collagen and mineralize these collagen fibrils. Preliminary in vitro studies have shown that even amelogenin has some sort of affinity for collagen fibrils. And our preliminary in vitro study showed that amelogenin nanospheres lie in close proximity to the collagen fibrils. This is a stained collagen fibril, and these are amelogenin peptide nanospheres lying in close proximity. So it is highly likely that there are electrostatic interactions between the positively charged collagen and the negatively charged peptides. But what is important here is that several mechanisms have been proposed for promoting collagen mineralization. Of course, one involves stabilizing ACP in the PILB strategy. There's also the size exclusion theory, which suggests that anything less than 6 kilodalton can freely diffuse into the gap zones of collagen fibrils. And our peptides are about 3 kilodalton. So we were curious to see if this is something that could be used as a potential strategy for repairing superficial dentine defects. And again, this is just the preliminary data. You have healthy dentine. You see these ribbon-like structures, beaded structures, which are collagen fibrils encased in minerals. When we subject it to 5 days of demineralization, it is completely stripped of minerals and forms small ribbon-like structures that is not recovered in the control sample. Whereas when we treat it with the amelogenin peptides, there's a significant gain in mineral density. We look at various techniques like micro-CT to evaluate that. And there's also an increase in the collagen mineralization. So to sum it up, what we are really trying to achieve is have an understanding of enamel matrix biology. Based on that, we design intelligent peptides that can self-assemble, control the crystal size, orientation, and help promote oriented crystals on the surface of human molars. And over repeated applications form an aprismatic-like enamel, similar to that in nature that we tend to lose over a period of time. And this interaction between amelogenin and collagen can also be exploited to look at collagen mineralization, occlusion of dentinal tubules, and mineralization of collagen fibrils to repair defects such as white spot lesions or even non-carious cervical lesions. How do we do that? We are still developing this technology, fabricating customized trays with pouches that can be loaded with the gel and worn overnight, just like a night guard. And again, I haven't shared a lot of images here. It's still under publication. And this is the study that we are trying to use QLF as one of the techniques to evaluate variations in fluorescence and lesion depth and lesion volume, etc. So to end this, Dr. Janet Aldock is one of the pioneers of enamel biomineralization. She is my supervisor, and it is quite a feat because she secured 3 NIH grants this year. And this was one of the grants that I worked with her on, peptide-mediated biomineralization strategy for tooth repair. So this is a four-year grant. And this also led to a patent, amelogenin chitosan hydrogel for dentine hypersensitivity. And I just want to add some happy memories here. I started with JSS Dental College, and I have a lot of fond memories, always grateful to the wonderful faculty, staff, and a lot of friends that I made along the way. The image here is that from Queen Mary University of London, Bath and the London, where I did my master's. The river that you see below is from University of Minnesota. This is the University of Minnesota campus. And this is USC, where I did the bulk of my research, University of Southern California. And these are just some images from family, friends, colleagues, and to all of them, I'm extremely grateful. And this is just to provide the acknowledgements, Dr. Janet Aldock, all lab members. We also had collaborators from UCLA, Dr. Shane White from PNNL, and they were all extremely helpful in helping me complete this project. So that brings me to the end of the presentation. I hope I haven't crossed the time limit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mukherjee. It was indeed a pleasure listening to you. And we could all see the passion through to which you have shown in your research, and that reflected in your presentation as well.
Thank you.
I'm so happy that you touched upon a topic that I found very intriguing, that in spite of being in our body for so long, we have never even come close to, as you said, growing enamel, right?
Yes.
It's always been mineralization. We know about enamel mineralization for years and years, but nobody thought about growing, regenerating enamel. And I'm sure your work is going to be a pioneer in, in forward for researchers to do more research on that.
Thank you.
You have really very well, started from nucleation, your precursors, to biomineralization, and then went on to your research topic on amylogenin, and from there you went on to your leucite-rich, the amylogen peptide, and then you developed your own small amino acid chains of 326 and 32, and you just didn't stop there. Now you're going into dentine also. So
yes.
It's so happy to see that. I just have one question for you.
Yes.
When you reduce the size of your peptide, does the time taken to regenerate or become lesser or more, in your opinion?
So, what we've noticed is as we bring down the size of the peptides, we are just holding on to the functional domains. Now, with full-length amylogenin, even though the crystals might be longer, it usually takes a little longer to actually form crystals. It's a slow process. Whereas the smaller peptides are far more active because they are more acidic in nature. So the process of crystal nucleation is accelerated. Now, whether that's a good thing or bad thing, we don't know. What we do know is that they help in controlling the crystal sizes. There's a uniformity in the size distribution. And when they control the crystal size, the orientation, the organization, and studies have suggested that when smaller crystals tend to propagate stresses better. So that's a plus point. So in terms of growing crystals, it's a lot faster. But of course, the major challenge is now making it into large scale. We are nowhere close to growing millimeter level, apatite layers.
Yeah, in fact, in 2015, when I had to do a presentation on enamel regeneration, the article, the max that they did was a 4 nanometer growth in, just a tip, just a dot, I would say.
Yes, so I would like to add that we managed pushing it to 30 microns.
Exactly, very nice. So
for a clinician, it's like, oh, come on, that's stripped away during acid etching. But it's really amazing because no one has ever done that, and it's really
in spite of it being such a homogeneous structure.
Yeah.
See, that's the difference between bone and enamel and dentine. Hard tissue of the tooth and hard tissues of the body. As bone, it's so much different in spite of being the same building block of hydroxyapatite. So is there any other questions? And Dr. Nandlal, would you like to?
I think Dr. Lata, if she's around, she would like to add something. Dr. Lata Anandakrishna, professor, because she has another meeting to go also. So Dr. Lata, welcome. I know you are for the next session because you said you want to leave. I welcome you. Would you be able to stay back for the next session, Doctor?
No, sir. I apologize. I have another session to go, but I am really impressed with Dr. Kaushik's presentation.
Yeah.
He is in fact talking on a topic that's very close to my heart. Enamel has always been one structure where nature, we have never been able to beat nature. Nature is such a great engineer. And as he said, we are amazed by the structure of enamel, and I really appreciate the work done by Dr. Kaushik. I hope whatever is sitting on the bench right now will translate into clinical practice soon, and we will be able to see the work of his patent being used more across. So congratulations, Dr. Kaushik, for great work, and I sincerely pray and hope that you will continue your good work. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Lata, for your comments, and I would be happy if you could stay back for the next session of Dr. Prem. Thank you, Dr. Kaushik. It was wonderful. We are really proud of you, and JSS is proud that one of the JSS alumni is going on with advancing front, of research from Indian representing across the globe and doing a great work, which is the still needs things to translate and reach. I'm sure this will remain as a proud fact with JSS that one of our students is doing such a research over there.
Nandu, I'd like to also add.
Yes,
I'd like to add that from the university side that we are so proud of one of our alumni from the dental school doing so well and doing some pioneering work like this. I was really impressed. In fact, for a dermatologist to sit through a dental webinar, it was quite interesting. He made me sit through this.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, Dr. Kushalapa, sir, for your remarks. Thank you, Kaushik, again. And we'll be in touch with, if at all we could collaborate further in any of the projects.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you to all the organizers. Thank you, Dr.
Dr. Paras, I think.
Thank you so much.
Will you take over, Dr. Paras? Would you introduce the next? Or I think it's Dr. Pratibha, right? Pratibha and Dr. Anita. Yeah. Dr. Prem is here for our next speaker already. Welcome, Dr. Prem.
Yeah, hi, good evening. How you all doing?
Yeah, we're doing good. I think it's good morning over there.
I know. So we are having our cup of coffee, you're having your cup of tea, so.
Dr. Kushalapa has met you earlier. He's here with us.
Hello.
So he's joining.
Hello, Dr. Prem.
Good morning, good evening. How are you, Dr. Kushalapa?
Well, thank you, sir.
Doing?
Well, thank you.
Even Dr. Razzle is here. We welcome you, Dr. Razzle.
How are you? Nice
I'm
to see you.
doing fine. Yeah. Dr. Razzle was also here in India with us for some time. When it was 4 years back, I suppose, when she inaugurated our infant oral health clinic. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dr. Anita and Pratibha, would you introduce the next guest speaker, please?
Just a minute, sir. Just a minute.
Yeah.
We have Dr. Pratibha here, who's the reader in the Department of Periodontics at JSS Dental College and Hospital, and who's also a member of SIG Cariology at our college. Over to you, Dr. Pratibha, to introduce our speaker, Dr. Prem Srinivasan.
Thank you, Dr. Anita. Hello, everyone. It's my privilege to introduce Dr. Prem Srinivasan, who is with us today, to deliver a talk on pathways of research in oral hygiene. Dr. Prem Srinivasan did his master's in medical microbiology from Kasturba Medical College, Manipal, and he completed his PhD in microbiology and molecular genetics from the University of Vermont, Burlington, and also his fellowship at the Laboratory of Infectious Diseases from Rockefeller University, New York. He has held various positions in Colgate-Palmolive, New Jersey, USA, including that of Associate Director. He is an adjunct faculty at Rutgers University and his immense interest in research has led to development of rapid testing methods for detection and quantification of the bacteria. He is also involved in research based on molecular genetics and immunological assays. He has various publications in prestigious journals to his credit. I also welcome Dr. Lata Anandakrishnan, who is with us here today. Dr. Lata is an Associate Dean, PG Studies in the Faculty of Dental Sciences, MS Ramaiah University. She completed her Master's in Pediatric and Preventive Dentistry from A.B. Shetty Institute of Dental Sciences. She has completed her PhD from Nitya University and has a PG Diploma in Law and Ethics, and also is a FAMER Fellow. Madam has guided many PG students and won various awards. With this brief introduction, I welcome Dr. Lata, and I invite Dr. Prem Srinivasan to take over. Dr. Prem, over to you, sir. Welcome. Over to you, Dr. Prem, sir.
Yeah, hi, good morning. So I do thank you all. It's a distinct privilege to be here today. And I hope you can see these slides.
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Yes. So first off, I want to thank the organizers and the SIG group and for the kind words by Dr. Pratibha and Dr. Anita with reference to introducing me. I appreciate the introduction and look forward to spending about 15 minutes with you on an area that was recently, that was published a little while ago. This is work from Rutgers, and it has a practical implication. It's a clinical trial, and the idea that we wanted to address here was to examine the effect of oral hygiene, effective oral hygiene, in terms of mitigating everyday bacteremias that people suffer from as part of their daily routine. So that is the overarching theme of this presentation. It's a study with adult human subjects. So just to recap, this was an investigator-initiated study as part of corporate efforts. We sometimes do receive proposals from investigators, and during the course of evaluating some of these proposals, we find that we sometimes need to do some background work to understand the significance of the proposal. We may need to augment the proposal to gain greater knowledge, to fill in knowledge gaps that may exist in the literature. And so that was part of some of the due diligence that was associated with this. And looking at the literature, and I'm sure this audience is very familiar with this, is the idea that bacteremia from oral sources have been well documented in the literature. And in this study, we go on to show, and I will show you some data towards this, is that some subjects from the population that you study, they consistently have a bacteremia. So I'll end up showing you that these subjects, if you sample them on weeks 1, 2, and 3, will consistently show a bacteremia derived from oral origin. And I'll then go on to showing you a study with these subjects where we institute an oral hygiene program, and this reduces the bacteremia. And supported with some more recent studies. These are population-based retrospective studies. So these are perhaps in the area of real-world evidence and so forth. And the point I wanted to try and make here is the concept that from a public health standpoint, perhaps some of these have true relevance in terms of mitigating some of the issues that we have today, and regretfully, perhaps even associated with some of the issues associated with COVID, where there have been various proposals by the British Dental Organization, Association, and others in terms of how to managing oral hygiene during these times that we are all homebound. So with that, I'd like to go forward and show you this introductory slide, which is very familiar to each of you. It's a clinical photos of healthy and gingiva. The one in the middle is gingivitis, and you can recognize all the clinical features of that. Followed by slide number C, which is periodontal disease, which you all know how to diagnose in the clinic through a variety of different approaches, including X-rays and examination. And this is an image that is from a Nature Review disease primers. So Now, with reference to periodontal disease itself, these are statistics from the United States. We know that a large population of this country have this concern. It's about 64 million individuals out of about 330 million, and you can see the distribution right there. So it's one of the most oral diseases, one of the most common NCDs, non-communicable conditions with pain, discomfort, chronic symptoms, and a substantial amount of the world population is impacted by this, and 50% of the adults have some form of periodontal disease. And there are healthcare expenditures, particularly impactful, not just for the so-called countries that have centralized healthcare, but also for other countries that may be adopting other types of healthcare economics, such as the countries that are developing and so on. And of course, as you all well know, and has been described in previous sessions today, there is a lot of behavior and that can be modified in other types of areas that help to prevent some of these conditions, and is a central facet of delivering clinical dentistry today globally. So this is another infographic. I'll keep this short. So again, it recaps the idea that a large number of the population have some form of periodontal disease, and it's a sizable amount. And these have been associated with a variety of other conditions, such as heart disease and osteoporosis and so on. And obviously the symptoms of this, I'm not going to spend any time on. And the preventative aspects of this are well known to you. The goal of my presentation is to simply focus in on the idea that that there are bacteremias that are triggered due to everyday activities, and perhaps try and understand how this happens and how we can potentially prevent this, with the idea that the overarching idea here is that these types of bacteremias may trigger everyday stimuli within the human body, and as a result may trigger longer term consequences, such as the ones associated with heart disease, of osteoporosis, and pregnancies and so on. So just a quick summary of the literature. We know that dental procedures and other routine oral hygiene, eating hard foods as part of daily activities, trigger the presence of bacteria and variety of microbial products, such as the lipopolysaccharide, which is found on the outside on the cell wall of bacteria, and other microbial toxins and so forth in the bloodstream, which is supposed to be sterile. What is notable is that these can be found in the critical organs like the heart, the lungs, etc. And this is within just a minute of these types of procedures being conducted in the human mouth. So this being the case, further, an additional evaluation of the literature shows that the bacteremias tend to increase with the severity of oral inflammation. In other words, subjects who have periodontal disease tend to have a higher propensity of the bacteremia. And I've also already pointed out to you the relationship between gingivitis is associated with stroke. Now, just a very quick look at the biology of that area. This is well known to each of you. The vasculature, the close proximity of the large abundance of bacteria, both gram-positive, negative, viruses, fungi, and not just found on the tooth surface as dental plaque, but also in the subgingival biofilm, the biofilms that are found on the tongue-associated biofilms, those on the cheeks, and the saliva, of course, that transmits these organisms across the human mouth are widely recognized. The study of these microbiomes using a variety of different new techniques, whether it is in caries or gingivitis and periodontal disease across different demographics, are increasingly being reported, and we are getting a better handle in terms of their specific dominance of bacterial populations in each of these conditions. So what is notable is the idea that these organisms are in close proximity to these blood vessels, and they can gain access to it, and they obviously trigger an immunological response. And again, I will not spend any time on it. That is shown on the right-hand panel. It triggers a variety of immediate first responders, such as neutrophils, followed by longer-term cytokines and other types of immunological responses to mitigate this insult that is happening at that local region. So this study itself has two parts to it. So the first part, like I explained previously, was to get some basis as to the overarching benefit of doing this study. So from a public health standpoint, what was the value of conducting this study? So what we wanted to find out is, does this have any public health relevance? So to understand that, we asked the question, do people generally have bacteremias, and what is the frequency of these bacteremias in a cohort that we could look at? And then follow that with the second bullet, which was the effect of oral hygiene on bacteremia. So the first part was to screen subjects for bacteremia. So I call this screening, but it really was the pilot phase. It was more a survey. So the study itself was conducted here in Rutgers University in Newark, New Jersey, and was a study that went through the Institutional Review Board, which is the ethics board, and all the appropriate regulations associated with conducting studies with human subjects. So all subjects who volunteered obviously had to go through informed consent, and were totally briefed as to the study requirements. And we also had phlebotomists and others on board who did specific functions as part of the study itself. So the study recruited adults who are over the age of 18, and these subjects were generally healthy. They did not have periodontal disease, but had gingivitis, which is a very common situation that is observed globally. And a large number of subjects do have gingivitis as scored by clinical parameters by a dentist. And these subjects were not undergoing any current medical or dental procedures, and they were asked to discontinue the use of their standard oral hygiene regimens, and were issued a commercially available toothpaste, a fluoride toothpaste, prior to the start upon study enrollment. So they went through what is called as a washout period or a run-in period. This lasted about 3 weeks. So after enrollment, for about 3 weeks, they discontinued the use of whatever other oral hygiene formulations they were using, and instead used this toothpaste. And the idea here was to standardize their oral hygiene prior to the start of the study, and that was the only goal here. And they were at that point scheduled to arrive at the dental clinic to provide samples of blood at the end of week 3, week 4, and week 5. So in other words, they came every week at a specified time in the morning. And the question that was asked was, if these subjects were given a standard stimulus of oral stimulus in terms of chewing on a hard surface, a hard food item like an apple, would they have a bacteremia? So that was the question that was asked. So when they arrived at the clinic, they were at week 3, that was what was conducted. A sample of blood was collected from the subjects immediately post this stimulus, and the blood sample was evaluated for bacteria using standard microbiological techniques in the associated laboratory. So after this week 3, they also underwent an oral exam, and the procedures were repeated at the end of week 4 and week 5. So the idea behind this was to find out the number of subjects who would have a consistent bacteremia. So if I remember, about 115 subjects were enrolled in this part of the study. And we found 30% of these subjects had consistent bacteremia. So in other words, whether we sample them at week 3, 4, or 5, they always had a bacteremia. So this was found across the board at all their visits. Certain other subjects were not so consistent. They may have a bacteremia at week 3 or at week 5, and they may not have a bacteremia at week 4, and other combinations thereof. So what was of interest to us was to identify a group of subjects who might have these consistent bacteremias across their scheduled visits. And we found 30% of these subjects fit this requirement. And a subset of these subjects were asked to participate in the main study. Again, this was an interventional study, and these subjects underwent the standard rigors of current clinical trial processes, including informed consent. And they completed all the ethics board's requirements and so forth. And this was a crossover design study. So in other words, it was a study design where all subjects utilized both the treatments. And in this case, it was either a fluoride toothpaste or a test toothpaste with antimicrobial ingredients. And the study itself had 2 treatment periods. So this would be randomized. And each treatment period started out with a washout phase, which you can see here. There's a washout phase for period 1, and there's a washout phase here for period 2. So the idea was to place these subjects on a washout where they would use a commercial fluoride toothpaste prior to the start of the study. And they would arrive at the dental clinic in the morning of their scheduled visit for their baseline samples. So the baseline samples essentially meant that they would refrain from oral hygiene for 12 hours prior to their visit, generally conducted very early, fairly early in the morning, about 8 a.m. And all these activities would be coordinated by appropriate hygienists and phlebotomists and so on. So at the baseline visit, the subjects would undergo an oral exam and they would have this, they would chew into an apple, and a sample of their blood would be collected, and they would be assigned as part of their treatment 1 or T1, a randomly assigned treatment toothpaste, which would be coded, so they would not be aware of the status of the toothpaste, or they would not be able to identify the toothpaste. And they were simply instructed to brush their teeth for twice a day. We did not tell them how to brush their teeth. We supplied them with a new toothbrush, and this was required of them for the next 21 days. And there were various compliance-based items that we instituted in the study. They had journals to mark their use of the toothpaste. We also recorded the weight of the toothpaste tube itself, and so on, to make sure that the subjects actually complied with the twice a day requirement. And we encouraged the subjects to contact the study site in case they had any adverse events or any other items that they needed to report or gain clarifications on. So at the end of these 21 days was the post-treatment visit. And again, this was a mirror image of the baseline visit. So, again, blood was sampled at this post-treatment visit. And the idea here was to understand what was the effect of a standardized oral hygiene regimen on the bacteremias that these subjects experienced. So because it's a crossover design study, 50% of the subjects were issued treatment 1 as part of the first part of the study, and 50% of the subjects were issued the second treatment, T2. But the individuals who were issued T1 initially in the first phase of the study went on to have a second washout phase with a fluoride toothpaste, and were scheduled for the second period, which included a baseline followed by the assignment of the second treatment and a post-treatment visit, with blood samples being collected again at this baseline, a second baseline, and this final post-treatment visit. The entire schedule was switched around. So some subjects would start with the treatment 2 and would complete treatment 1 as part of their period 2. So, so slightly different from a parallel design, but has some benefits in terms of conducting the study, in terms of compliance, and in terms of managing the subjects. So this was the study design. And what I have here are some results for you. So these are results showing you the numbers of bacteria that we find in the blood samples of these subjects at each of the outcome visits. So I have the baseline here, and what we show you here is the mean number of bacteria plus minus standard deviation, or SD. And I show you the outcome results, which are after 21 days of hygiene, and again, the mean and the standard deviation. So the subjects assigned the test toothpaste or the fluoride toothpaste had approximately the same numbers of bacteria. This was non-significant at the baseline visit. On the other hand, there was a reduction, a significant reduction in the group that were assigned the test toothpaste with only 11 counts seen in the samples collected at the day 21. There was a decline in the fluoride group as well, but this turned out to be non-significant. But the differences between the test group and the fluoride group at day 21, just 3 weeks of brushing, was rather remarkable and was statistically significant. And the test itself was conducted. The statistical analysis plan for this required a few additional features. So the statisticians in this case would include in the statistical modeling the sequence. So in other words, you know, how the treatment itself was issued, whether the treatment was issued in the first period or in the second period. And it also included certain other nested properties, which a statistician is better qualified to explain, but I'm informed that these are appropriate to make sure that there are no random effects that we are picking up in the test itself. And the study utilized what is referred to as an analysis of covariance, abbreviated here as ANCOVA. So in other words, this uses the baseline for each subject to understand the post-treatment outcome results. And shown here is a summary of that. We see that if we compare the test and the control, which is the fluoride, we see that within treatment difference, so from the baseline to the endpoint for the test toothpaste, it was a 72% reduction, which is obviously significant in terms of bacteremias. Whereas in the case of the fluoride, there was a reduction of about 18%, but it was still not quite significant. But when they compared the test and the fluoride toothpaste and using this analysis of covariance or ANCOVA, using all these modelings, they found approximately a 69% reduction. And what I will briefly hint at is the to gain identity of the bacteria that were collected in these blood samples. The samples were further analyzed by a DNA array, microarray, for the human oral microbiome analysis. So this is essentially a DNA-based analysis to identify that we had not collected skin microflora, but these are actually truly bacteria from the human oral cavity, and cross-compared with samples from the corresponding subjects. So that was an additional control, but I will not spend any time on that because that was just an internal control. And so what I wanted to mention here is that the subjects completed the study. They did not report any adverse events. And this current study supports some of our previous studies that show what is called as a whole mouth antimicrobial effect. So the idea here is to evaluate the microbiomes or the bacterial load in different parts of the human mouth. So when I refer to that, I mean not just the dental plaque organisms, but also those on the tongue biofilm, the cheeks, the gums, and of course the saliva, to understand the idea, what happens to these bacteria post brushing? What is the short-term and longer-term effects? And we show that using effective formulations is what is referred to as a whole mouth antimicrobial effect. So the simple act of brushing your teeth deposits the foam and the other ingredients in these toothpastes in different parts of the mouth, and it provides what I would call a whole mouth effect. And that is something that has been published again using healthy subjects. So the current study with the bacteremia is supported by that. It's also supported by many long-term studies. These are 6-month studies recognized by, for instance, the ADA, the American Dental Association, the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, others, in terms of reporting formulations appropriate for reductions in gingivitis, measured by classic clinical parameters, such as the clinical indices by Lowe's illness and so on. And of course, the corresponding reductions in the dental plaque amongst the subjects measured at different distinct time points over the 6-month period. So what is notable here is that this was the first study where we show a reduction in bacteremia after routine toothbrushing. And what is also important to point out is that the subjects in the control group consistently demonstrated a bacteremia at all time points, whereas notably, a number of subjects in the test group had no bacteremia, which is rather remarkable, because what I think is going on potentially is that the longer-term benefits of effective oral hygiene would be the suppression of those types of immunological features within the human body, and therefore it would benefit the overall health parameters of these subjects. And like I mentioned, we did do this HOMIM, which is the oral microbiome analysis. This was to prove the point that what we were recording in these blood samples were indeed oral bacteria, and they were not skin isolates. So it was simply a control. I want to close this out with 2 potential outcomes that are of interest. So the first point I wanted to bring to your attention is this study. This is from UCLA, and it's a pediatric nursing cohort, a bunch of children who require oncology-based treatment. So the idea here was oral hygiene, or the implementation of an oral hygiene protocol amongst these subjects who are undergoing serious medical concerns has an effect in terms of reducing the central line associated bloodstream infections and important adverse events in these subjects. So I think it is notable that the simple act of helping patients with oral hygiene protocols, with influencing the nursing staff in these hospitals and other types of settings, can probably aid some of the adverse events associated with advancing healthcare. And today that's an important area of concern as we look around the world and we see the impact of, say, COVID, and the effects that it has on selected populations, either in the urban or the rural setting, or different specific demographics. And as a matter of fact, I'm sure you're all quite familiar with this. The BDJ, the British Dental Journal, and others have been looking at this in terms of COVID, and an area of interest, perhaps that can be considered by your panel, is the fact that the COVID virus itself attaches to the ACE receptor, which is found in the human mouth and mucosa and so forth, and is obviously conveyed by a variety of coughing and sneezing. And we have seen the debates and the current recommendations in terms of masks and so on. And the BDJ has come forward with specific recommendations, which I'm sure you're all utilizing in various formats in your own dental practice and personal space. So this here is one study. And there is one more I think I wanted to bring to your attention. This I thought was rather interesting. This is from Preventative Cardiology earlier this year, January, I believe. A study out of South Korea. So what is really notable here is some of these countries, as you know, have distinct healthcare policies and features. So this was a cohort. This was referred to as a National Health Insurance Health Screening Cohort. And this, as I said, was preventative cardiology. And the title of this was Improved Oral Hygiene with Decreased Risk of AFib and Heart Failure. So this is a population-based cohort studies. So I think these types of studies where we truly have outcome measures from long-term large populations potentially have some benefits in terms of guiding future research. And I'd like to take you through this in brief. So they had looked at a database of over 500,000 5 lakh subjects, and they had no oral records in a large number of those. And they also, what is interesting is that these subjects had complete medical records, and there was obviously about 8,000 who did not. And there were others who had previous cardiac effects. And removing all these other subjects from the database, they were left with a large cluster of subjects. And you can see that they were 52 years and they had 10-year follow-ups, and they had past history, and they had laboratory findings important in this context. And they had no demographic, no missing data with reference to. So I'd like to draw your attention. These are various survival curves, but I think the one that is most interesting in the interest of time is this item right here. So if you focus in on this, you can see that the subjects who brush their teeth 3 times a day, which is shown, I believe, in this green line, had better outcomes in terms of AFib and heart-related outcomes than those who reported fewer than 3 times daily brushing. And there are other outcomes here as well in terms of missing teeth and frequency of dental visits and periodontal disease. But I thought this was quite striking that this was discovered in this population. So perhaps of interest, perhaps something that can be considered in other geographies as well. And with that, I want to mention that this was a cartoon that that the authors had put together in terms of what may be going on. You can see that the bacteremias, and I think perhaps the routine bacteremias may have an impact on some of these outcomes, and the ability to mitigate some of those on an ongoing basis may perhaps serve a benefit. So this is a longitudinal retrospective study. I also like to point out a couple of potential limitations as identified by the authors. The study is based on a single ethnicity, and the atrial fibrillation was based on diagnostic criteria. So it was, there were no additional testing. And from a dental standpoint, you all would be interested, no periodontal disease x-rays were available, or reasoning for why they were missing teeth. But they did have blood biomarkers, and there was obviously a recall bias because the study only included those who came back. And so those are a couple of items that we need to keep in mind. And with this, I'd like to conclude. I'd like to present to you that transformation requires a vision, and is showcased in the current event. I want to circle back and thank the organizers. So it's quite visionary that they have stepped up in the current situation to transform it by pulling together this very interesting session over a cup of coffee or a chai break, as may be the case. And so it's quite practical, it's valuable, and we are here able to communicate significant findings as by various speakers and others who will be presenting later on. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Prem. I'm sure you have touched an area which is very, very important. We always try to talk about oral hygiene only related to localized problems of as a dental case, like the person's having gingivitis and
I'm sorry, I'm missing you. So
and we, of course, we always try to rule out what is a systemation, but research should be a great contribution towards our other health professionals to say that oral health care is made a mandatory. I'm sure Dr. Anita and Pratibha would like to add their experiences at JSS. Dr. Anita, please.
Yes.
We have a similar program at our JSS hospital where we are trying to implement oral health care at a medical hospital, JSS hospital. I'm sure Anita would like to say something here. And this cardiac care and cardiac related issues, I think we need to take it up shortly. And most of the Indian hospitals should make it as a protocol and a regime in the oral health policy makers to make it mandatory and introduce in a hospital care setting to make it a start. Dr. Anita, please. Anita, you have to unmute the.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, please. Would you like to say some of your experiences
Yes.
of extending oral health care in the hospital care? Sir?
Yeah, we have established a oral hygiene regimen there, which has disseminated into a well-established regimen in our COPD, that is chronic obstructive pulmonary disease group of patients. So in our hospital, this research is also being carried out other than actually establishing our oral hygiene regimen, that we look into the acute exacerbations after an interval of 1 year. And we are also looking at interleukin levels. And we also did a small bit of study that around 150 patients of COPD with periodontitis, where we had the nursing staff supervising all these group of patients, inpatients that is, with giving oral hygiene instructions, toothbrush, toothpaste, as well as chlorhexidine mouthwash, as compared to only chlorhexidine or just brushing. We followed up for the hospital stay, and we just found that people with brushing and paste and just with the added chlorhexidine mouthwash had an earlier recovery from in virtue of the hospital stay. And it was impossible for us to intervene as, in the periodontal perspective or any other oral prophylaxis, because the patients were inpatients and they found it difficult to maintain oral hygiene. So this was a bit of study that we had done. We are also doing other research related to COPD. And we have established almost like a regimen, and we continue to do that on an everyday basis to this group of patients, both inpatient and OPD group of patients.
Thank you, Anita. Yeah. Professor Prem, I'm sure we will take some of your advices and in planning of our extension of this oral health care. Dr. Paras is projecting your visit to JSS some time back, maybe how many years back?
9 years back, sir.
9 years back. All of us are looking very young.
Almost same date, sir. It is
Yeah.
July 15 today, and it was July 14th.
Yeah. Exactly 9 years. I think this was one of those our joint projects in the Department of Conservative Dentistry on hypersensitivity. Yeah. Nice memories. Thank you for sharing that, and thank you, Dr. Prem. And I think I think some of the questions are there. We will mail it to you. How do we really plan these type of studies in a hospital setting? Particularly, it's not easy to enter a medical hospital. There's in India, as we have this inhibition, you need to go through protocols. Such type of how do we really approach medical hospital to take the oral health care system? It's like, I don't know, unless there's I would say I have a small answer to this. Is like maybe it is when it's a private hospital, it's easier. When it's a government hospital, unless the healthcare workers make it mandatory that an oral health service should be part and parcel of a hospital, and they should at least have an, if they don't have an appointed dentist, they should have by invitation or by a visit consultation to come and train once in a way to the oral health care, to the nursing and healthcare providers at a hospital setting. Would you like to say something on that? How do you manage in the other places where dental care extending to the medical setting?
So I think these are very interesting questions, and I think as we gain additional knowledge and some of these advances, I think during the speakers in the session and others, in the journal literature, I do think that these things are going to progress. There is a greater recognition, and this will take some time in terms of, and we're beginning to see the implementation of some of these oral hygiene procedures. And perhaps one quick story I can inform you is out of Japan, where older age residents in a home, residence home, were provided, I think it was every 2 weeks, a professional brushing regimen. So this was nothing more than a 15-minute procedure. Oh. And they report reductions in influenza in this population, very fragile population. So what is notable here is the simple act of oral hygiene provision can help in aspiration, pneumonias, preventing some of these other concerns, and for generally for a very small sum of money. So when we go back to the roots of clinical dentistry, the idea that we can deliver care to a large number of to the large, broader population rapidly with simple tools is very appealing. And I think this is the right group. They have access to a number of patients. And as part of the clinical practice, they can implement this in their daily practice. And I think over time, this message will spread in collaboration with organizations like the Indian Dental Association and others across various other countries. Thank you.
Thank you. So the message is, I think, to the participants is that all of us, though we are not able to deliver the oral health care now in the present scenario, it is very important we reach through the medicos and see that all these patients, whether they are hospital or at home, they follow vigorously oral hygiene procedures, because late hours and work from home should not make them neglect their oral health hygiene and cause this type of risk. And as we know, we need to share, because as medical professionals, I'm sure they may not be having complete awareness that oral health implications in the occurrence or as a risk factor, though it is documented, but we have to reach and see that what would be the possible oral hygiene measures which we could share for them. Thank you, Dr. Professor Prem Srinivasan, for taking out time and being with us in this very early morning. Thank you very much on behalf of SIG, Dental Cariology, and JSS Academy of Education and Research. Dr. Kushalappa had communicated to say special thanks to you on behalf of the university. Thank you.
Thank you all, and have a wonderful day. Thank you one more time.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
So we should, Paras, we can go with our last speaker of the day. Dr. Razil has been there right from I think the last 3 speakers. We are delayed by maybe half an hour already. Sorry about that, Dr. Razil. Oh.
That's okay.
I would like.
Yeah. Please, Paras, please welcome.
I would like to invite Dr. Anita to kindly introduce our next speaker.
It's a privilege to introduce our speaker, Dr. Stefani Rossi, who's an associate clinical professor, Department of Epidemiology and Health Promotion Department of Periodontics, New York University College of Dentistry. She holds a PhD in epidemiology, fellowship in geriatrics, residency in periodontology, MPH in public health. Her research is multifaceted, and it's aimed at low-income pregnant women, pre-diabetes and diabetes, caries prevention, cancer, respiratory pathogens, just a few to name in her gigantic array of work. She has an elephantine experience in research where she's worked on low-income pregnant women, rural caries prevention, project development programs, electronic tool development, cancer research, craniofacial research, aging, and the funding has been huge. She has many awards to her credit for mentoring students, ADR Summer Student Research Award. She's also the elected member, Academy of Distinguished Educators, NRSAT 32 Postdoctoral Fellowship, Student Council Appreciation Award. And she has numerous publications to her credit. And to name a few, it is DCNA, the Dental Clinics of North America. And over to Dr. Paras.
No.
Dr. Razil, can you start over?
Yes. Welcome. It's all to you. We welcome you, Dr. Razil. Please, you can share the slide.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, we can see your slide. Yeah.
Okay. I just want to do the slideshow. Let me see.
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Good morning to those of you in the US and good afternoon to those of you in India. It's a pleasure to be here today to talk about my work in promoting oral health in low-income women. This is a project that's very near and dear to my heart and something that I've been working on for the last couple of years. So I'll show you why we did this and where we are now. So you may not know, but in the US, only about 40% of pregnant women report a dental visit. And this is despite that we know, pregnant women are at increased risk for oral disease during pregnancy due to hormonal changes. They do have pregnancy gingivitis, anywhere between 30 and 100%, depending upon the study you look at. And yet, a proportion of them, 60%, don't see a dentist during pregnancy, and this is a problem. There are a lot of barriers, a lot of reasons for this, and these are also all at the policy level, community level, clinic, provider, patient levels. So in order to improve oral health in pregnant women and to get them into dental care, we need to address this at multiple levels. In response to this problem, there was a national guideline document that was published in 2012 and reviewed last year to address these common barriers and to advocate for dental care for pregnant women. So here we have a typical a pregnant woman with pregnancy gingivitis. As we know that this increases throughout the pregnancy and tends to be worse in the third trimester and will generally go away after the woman gives birth. But if there's underlying periodontal disease, this can be a big problem. And, a lot of women report bleeding gums during pregnancy. And sometimes this, influences them such that they actually stop the oral hygiene because they don't want their gums to bleed. We also know, very importantly, that a mother's oral health is the biggest predictor of the oral health of her children. And early childhood caries is still a big problem here in the US. We know that the bacteria are transmitted from mother to child. And we know also from many really good studies that have been done where investigators have intervened during pregnancy to reduce the cariogenic load in the mother's oral cavity, that this can have a profound effect on transmission of bacteria and caries incidence in children. And up to about 14 years of age, these studies have shown that intervening during pregnancy can have this profound effect. We also know that, especially we know this in the US and elsewhere in the world, that women of lower socioeconomic status tend to have more disease. So we certainly also see this in pregnancy. We try to emphasize excellent maternal oral health during pregnancy to reduce the onset of progression of gingivitis and or periodontal disease during pregnancy, and reduce the risk of caries, both in the mother and transmission to the child. And we hope to improve the possibility of better oral health for the expected child by reducing the number of the proportion of cariogenic organisms in the mother's mouth. Importantly, during pregnancy, women are often at heightened alert to maintain their own health for the sake of their child's health. So this is something that we can use to our advantage when we educate women about the importance of oral health. And, you know, we really see this as an important time where you can have a pretty profound influence on the mother and the child's oral health. Pregnancy really is a window of opportunity for women most vulnerable to poor oral health. Those are low income or, you know, low socioeconomic status, low education, to improve their oral health because they have increased access to dental care during pregnancy. And this is because in the US, the Medicaid program, which is kind of like the public insurance program for low income persons, they have increased access to this when they're pregnant because, of course, prenatal care is so important to reduce negative birth outcomes like preterm birth and low birth weight, so that states have an incentive to provide insurance to pregnant women because that will save them money, really. So there's expanded access to this Medicaid program. And it depends on the state in the US, but in most states, Medicaid does pay for some dental care. And in New York, the dental care that it pays for is pretty comprehensive. So that means that women have dental insurance only when they're pregnant. So this is really a great opportunity to get in there and provide care that they've been unable to get before pregnancy. Back in 2006, New York State was actually the first state in the US to issue evidence-based guidelines for dental care during pregnancy. And this was because they realized that a lot of pregnant women were being refused dental care by dentists for a number of reasons. And the state dental director convened a panel to review the evidence. You know, a lot of dentists felt that providing dental care to pregnant women was unsafe for the woman and the developing child. And this is based on, you know, a long history of what we've been taught in dental school, you know, maybe being really overcautious about providing care. And then what happened was a lot of dentists just wouldn't provide any care. And they would say, well, you know, come back when you're no longer pregnant. Well, the problem is, especially for low income women, you know, this is not really an option for them. They don't have childcare. And once they give birth, you know, their focus is on the child, not on themselves. So back in 2006, the state dental director for New York State, he convened a panel and they reviewed the evidence that, you know, dental care during the first trimester or the third trimester is unsafe. And they found no evidence. And, you know, we know from the literally hundreds of studies that have been done in an attempt to improve rates of preterm birth and low birth weight, that providing dental care at any time during pregnancy is actually very safe. The guidelines from New York State, which are very similar to the guidelines that were subsequently developed nationally, emphasize that dental care at any point during pregnancy is safe and effective, that prenatal care providers such as midwives, nurses, OBGYNs should evaluate the oral health of their patients and refer patients to dentists for evaluation and treatment, and that dentists should welcome patients and provide dental treatment as needed, weighing the benefits of care with any potential risks, of course, as they do with any patient. The national guideline document was released in 2012. It's been created and endorsed by the American Dental Association and the American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. And the purpose of this was to improve access to dental care for pregnant women. As I mentioned, historically, dentists have been taught to provide routine care for pregnant women only during a narrow window, the second trimester, in order to avoid any effects of dental treatment on the developing fetus and during the first trimester, and the patient's comfort level in the third trimester. And this was taken from my textbook. You know, when I was in dental school, this is what we learned. Pretty much, you know, up until pretty recently, this is what dentists learned. And a lot of times we know that, you know, dentists continue to provide the care that they learned when they were training. So this was a problem and something that we needed to overcome here. Many of our clinical dental faculty in the US and at NYU were trained prior to 2006, had not had any updated training in providing dental care to pregnant patients, are afraid of litigation, are afraid of being sued for any kind of problems that might arise from, you know, any kind of issues that might arise during pregnancy, and are unaware that there are current clinical guidelines that state that dental care should be provided at any time during the pregnancy. And in fact, we found that, you know, in our clinics at NYU, which is a huge dental clinic, I think we're the biggest Medicaid dental provider, possibly in the US, that we had pregnant patients that actually were turned away from our clinic and refused care. Going back to my research that I've done previously, I became interested in this problem from a clinical standpoint, but also I wanted to look at New York State just to see how we fared against the rest of the country. And it seems like we're doing a little better. We've got about, you know, 55 to 58% or so of pregnant women actually reporting having a cleaning during pregnancy. These are data from the CDC. And then I also wanted to look across time to see if the release of those guidelines in 2006 had any effect. And it appeared that, you know, they didn't at this time. I'd like to look at it more recently, but one thing that we can see is that women who have Medicaid coverage, those are low-income women, are much less likely to report a dental cleaning during pregnancy. And this is despite them having coverage for that dental cleaning. So, you know, not having to pay for it. So, you know, this is really important. I felt like we could really have quite an impact in here if we approached these low-income pregnant women who were at increased risk of disease, were probably going into the pregnancy with having more disease, and get them up to the rates that would be, you know, ideally 100%. So we started a program, let me see. Oh, going back to my original research, this was something that I did when I was in training for my PhD. And I don't know in India if you have this saying, but it's with every pregnancy that you have, you lose a tooth. So I wanted to see if this was indeed true. And I looked at a large American existing database from the NHANES studies. And what I wanted to see was, you know, do women who report more live births actually have worse dental health? And I looked at tooth loss, and I looked at caries, and I looked at periodontal disease. So this tooth loss article was now published some time ago. But I looked at the NHANES study, and I saw that when you did look at the number of births, you saw that across all socioeconomic strata, that we saw that women who had more live births had lost more teeth. And this was regardless of whether you were in a low socioeconomic income bracket or a higher one. So I found this to be very interesting. And even when we controlled for factors that were potential confounders, such as income and education and diabetes, we found that this relationship still held up. I also looked at caries, and interestingly, what we found here was that although total caries appeared to be roughly equal in different groups, different parity level groups, so that those women who had higher parity, they had about the same total level of caries, but what they did have was a lot more untreated caries. So this made me think that, you know, these women, what's happening to them is that they have caries, they're going to the dentist, and then the dentist is refusing care, maybe putting in a temporary restoration. And then the woman, you know, has the child and then doesn't have time to come back, and she winds up losing those teeth. So those untreated caries are being translated into the lost teeth because they're not being addressed. So in terms of what the recommendations, the national guidelines recommend is that actually prenatal care providers start the ball rolling in terms of their patients' oral health, and that they assess the patient's medical history, and that they refer patients to dental practitioners. And then the dentists need to step up and, you know, in conjunction with the prenatal care provider, really provide the treatment that's necessary during pregnancy. So for diagnosis, we take the radiographs that are needed for the treatment of acute and chronic oral diseases, including caries and periodontal disease. Provide treatment as needed, regardless of trimester. Of course, taking the patient's wishes into account. You know, in evidence-based care, we do have to always tailor the treatment plan to the patient's wishes, you know, in addition to using the best evidence. So, you know, there are patients that will say, you know, I'd like to delay my treatment and I will come in after the patient, after the patient gives birth. But, you know, with these low-income patients, we found that the best thing is to really provide the care while they have the coverage, the financial means to pay for it. Of course, oral hygiene instructions are essential to minimize gingivitis during pregnancy. We found that if we see the patients early in their pregnancy, we can actually prevent a lot of the pregnancy gingivitis from occurring. Restoring caries will decrease the cariogenic bacteria in the oral cavity and then reduce the child's caries susceptibility. Concerns during dental treatment in terms of addressing these, you know, dentists argue that maybe restorative materials are unsafe, or that local anesthetic with or without unsafe. Studies have shown that indeed polymer-based dental fillings and amalgams are safe to use during pregnancy, and that local anesthetic with epinephrine is safe to use during pregnancy. Radiographs are safe. The FDA in the US recommends that dental radiographs for pregnant patients may be prescribed according to the usual and customary selection criteria. Of course, use an apron and thyroid shield. Preventive strategies during pregnancy. We want to protect against enamel erosion after vomiting during the first trimester. If the patient has experienced this nausea and vomiting, we advise the patient to rinse the mouth with water immediately, or use sodium bicarbonate solution, and do not brush right after vomiting. This is based on some in vitro studies that show that enamel is weakened due to the acid from vomiting, and that brushing right after vomiting can actually cause damage to the enamel. Maintaining good plaque control is key. Oral hygiene instructions, interdental cleaning is key to remove that bacteria that's between the teeth. Maintaining a healthy diet is important, limiting cariogenic snacks, and frequent recall visits for cleaning, education, and oral hygiene instructions. Other concerns that we recommend during the first trimester, of course, taking into account whether the patient has nausea or hyperemesis. Advise the patient to rinse with water mixed with a teaspoon of baking soda. And then, of course, during the third trimester, to prevent hypotension, lean the patient onto the left side during dental treatment. This relieves pressure on the inferior vena cava. So these are things that we've been teaching the dental students, we've been teaching the dental faculty as part of our program. The guidelines also list, they have a table of medications and talk about which medications are safe to use during pregnancy. Generally speaking, the medications that we use in dentistry are safe to use during pregnancy, with the exception of tetracycline. And we make this this table available to all the faculty and the students in the clinic, so they can refer to it during treatment. What we've done at the college was, in an effort to improve access to dental services for low-income pregnant women, is we partnered with an OB clinic right across the street from us at Bellevue Hospital. And Bellevue Hospital is one of the oldest public hospitals in the United States, certainly in New York. And we have a long-standing relationship with Bellevue. But Bellevue actually came to us and they said, you know, we have a lot of pregnant patients, they need care, they need dental care, and yet they're not going to the dentist. So is there something that we can do? So, you know, we teamed up with the obstetricians and the midwives at Bellevue to create a program where we could address those barriers to care at multiple levels. We received funding from the New York State Health Foundation, about a year of funding that really helped us get this program started. Key elements of this program included educating providers, both at Bellevue and at the College of Dentistry. And we did in-service training for the obstetricians, the OB residents, midwives, nurses at Bellevue, as well as the clinic staff. And then at the College of Dentistry, we did in-service training for the faculty and for the dental students, and then of course for the patients also, because sometimes the patients feel that it is not safe for them or it's not good for them to receive dental care during pregnancy. So we also had to educate the patients. We are on site at Bellevue Hospital within the prenatal clinic every week at where we screen their patients for oral disease. And we do this using a team of faculty and dental students, third and fourth year dental students, and nursing students also come. And they learn how to do, these are family practice nursing students and midwife nursing students. And we teach them how to do an oral exam. From the clinic at Bellevue, what we do is we educate the patients about what the kind of care they need, what kind of problems they're having, and we refer them over to the College of Dentistry, which is just across the street. And we talk to them about, you know, the treatment that they need, and we get them into care. A very important part of our program is patient navigation. A lot of these patients are immigrants. About 60 to 70% of them speak Spanish. So we hired a layperson, basically what we call a patient navigator, who can talk to the patients and also help them navigate the healthcare and the dental healthcare system so that they don't get lost, they don't fall through the cracks. And we follow them very carefully. Patient navigator talks to them oftentimes in Spanish and makes contact with them, makes sure that they show up for their appointment. She's on the phone, texting with them, meeting them for their appointment, and sitting there during their appointment and answering any questions that they have. And, you know, this heightened communication and tracking, and we also address barriers on an individual basis as they arise. So childcare issues, transportation issues, these are things that come up and that will get in the way of a woman being able to keep her dental appointments. So this is kind of a schematic of what we do over at Bellevue, and then refer to the College of Dentistry. Once the patient is in the College of Dentistry, we're able to track them through our electronic dental record, and we perform, you know, constant patient navigation and monitoring to make sure that the women come in. I'm just going to show you some clinical slides of, you know, some of the typical patients we've seen. Here's a pretty typical patient with pregnancy gingivitis. As I mentioned, pregnancy gingivitis is reversible, and then that means that some people don't really care about it because they figure it's going to go away. But what happens is that if there's underlying periodontal disease, this could be a real problem. This increase in inflammation during pregnancy, and could cause progression of the periodontal problems. Here's a patient. I'm sorry, this slide is a little blurry, but here's a patient, very young. I think she was 26 years old, and you can see that she has significant periodontal disease. Even though we weren't able to take radiographs over in the OB clinic, you could see that she already has pathologic migration of the lower anterior teeth, a lot of accumulation of plaque and calculus here. When we brought her back to the clinic, we saw on her radiographs, really significant periodontal destruction that, obviously had been there for some time, but, was exacerbated by the pregnancy. So these are patients that really need quite a bit of care, some of them. Here's a lady who had a pregnancy tumor, pyogenic granuloma. The interesting thing about her case was that this was, you can also see the pregnancy gingivitis that she has. She had this pyogenic granuloma from a previous pregnancy. It never went away. And then she came in with her second pregnancy, and she said, oh yeah, that's been there since my previous pregnancy. So, we definitely brought her into the college to address this issue. What kind of progress have we made in the last, well, this was the first 18 months of the program. We saw about 366 women over at Bellevue, and this was only working about 3 hours a week. They had a high level of oral disease. About a third of them reported bleeding gums. About a third of them reported having a cavity or a hole in the tooth. About 30% reported sensitivity, and almost 30% reported pain. So they had pretty substantial disease. We were able to get in about 40% of them to be seen at the College of Dentistry for at least one visit. And the number of visits ranged from 1 to about 15. Now we've seen about 450 women, and the rates of oral problems that they report is about the same. We've gotten that rate up to about 50%. We also were able to call those women that didn't come in, even though we had scheduled them for appointments, and about another 10% reported seeing their own dentist. We had quite a bit of success with the patient navigator. We were able to measure before she came and then after she came, what was the proportion of women who we screened who actually completed at least one visit. And her name was Elsa. And we saw that prior to her coming, we were seeing only about 35% of the screened women coming in for care. And then afterwards, about 44%. So we were able to increase that about 10%. But what we did see that was really substantial was that the number of visits that each woman had increased tremendously. So we were able to increase not only the proportion of women that came in, but more significantly, the number of visits that they had. So we were able to retain the patients. And this was important also in terms of the college for their billing, because this brought in money for their programs, because they receive reimbursement from the state every time they see a Medicaid patient. So we were able to actually double the amount of money that we brought in by using the patient navigator. But there's still a remaining problem in that about 56% of the pregnant women that we screen at Bellevue did not come to the College of Dentistry, and this is despite having oral symptoms, despite providing the screening, educating them, increasing the access by the Medicaid and the patient navigation. And we had a substantial proportion of women from who came to the college who did not complete their treatment. We were able to find out the reasons for this. We were unable to reach patients after screening. These are women low income, low education, so sometimes they're very hard to track down. They're very busy, they might work under the table, they're recent immigrants, they might be illegal immigrants. So there's a lot of reasons why we could not reach them. We had a small proportion of dental students that didn't follow up with the patients. This wasn't a major problem. Some of the patients would lose their insurance after they give birth. The Medicaid would only last another 2 months. So that was a problem, and that's why we really need to get them in while they're pregnant. Some of the women reported they didn't have anybody to care for their children while they were having their dental appointments. And then some of them were unknown reasons. When I looked in the literature to find, other programs and the success rates, what I found that was really interesting was that it seemed that other programs reported very similar success rates, and that we were hitting a ceiling at about 55 to 60% of women, and that last 40% people just are not getting in. So the question is, what can we do on top of this pretty intensive program that we've done to get these women in for care? And that's kind of where we're going with this. We've published some abstracts based on this study, specifically on our training programs for dental students and dental faculty. We did some surveys, before and after, pre and post, and specifically on, the number of women that we've gotten in. We're preparing manuscripts based on this project. We submitted an R01 to look at, really look further into, what are the reasons that the women who didn't come in, because we thought that we could maybe, the next step might be actually providing some dental care within Bellevue at their prenatal appointments. And we weren't funded on the first round, but we're gonna resubmit. This is a special RFA that we were looking at. We're gonna resubmit in November, and also looking at other grant opportunities. We're gonna do a qualitative study where we're gonna actually do in-depth interviews with the women who came in and those that didn't come in. And, since COVID shut our clinics down and shut our rotation down in March of this year, we've been doing our rotation virtually with the dental students in order to continue to train them. But unfortunately, we haven't been able to see any of the pregnant women. And I'm going to be following up with the Bellevue Clinic. Dentists in New York just started seeing patients again, and actually after I give this lecture, I'm off to see my own patients. And this has been a big problem. How do we safely see patients now that we still have COVID around? New York is seeing pretty low prevalence right now, but we are worried about a resurgence given what's going on in the rest of the country, and then of course a second wave in the fall. So with that, I'd like to thank you all for coming, and I ask you to reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you.
Yeah, it was. Anita, would you? So we would be very glad. In fact, Rizal, it was a wonderful experience which you shared from the oral health care program for the pregnant women in the hospitals over there, at particularly NYU, and the project where you're actually doing. It will be very interesting to know more from you. Maybe we'll send you an email and see what, how did you like make the programs, how often they were trained, and what was the follow-up time schedules for the pregnant women to come. So I will just like to know some of those protocols little, if you could, so that I don't think there are any guidelines as such existing where there is a clarity, like how often and how many sessions, and I think it will be of great help if you could let us. We'll see your articles probably published, which may have a highlight on that, or we'll come back to you
Yeah.
because there was one. Yeah. That's what. So we would like to know, because in India, as you know, it is only a selective attempt we do. Whoever comes to our dentist, he tries to educate who comes to the dentist. We try to give them some counseling on oral health care, but in per se, oral health care reaching to the pregnant women at the at the hospital center, the concept is still not there. It is only maybe a small project based, or it is a kind of a research based. Some research student wants to go and do this program, but by policy, every hospital should incorporate this. Would be an eye opener for our country, and I'm sure that if we have some kind of a blueprint, we can make that and submit that to one of our projects to our Indian policymakers to recommend. And thank you very much, Professor Razul. So this basically the people would like to know the protocol, so that of course everybody can make a protocol, but it will be good like when we do some similar protocols, like what type of, like you said, that was very interesting that one decided you should not brush your teeth immediately. That because many people think immediately they want to go and brush your teeth because of the intolerable taste, or they think something has gone wrong. That was a good information. And about the sodium bicarbonate to be used as a mouthwash is, I'm sure, I remember seeing a toothpaste in USA, which a toothpaste with sodium bicarbonate alone. I don't know if it's still there. So I think in India,
I don't know. It might
yeah.
be. The baking soda.
I did see one paste some long time back when I visited. So those are the new informations, and basically the care during the pregnancy and what we should do. And I just have a question. What is the situation today? Like, do they believe in prenatal fluoride tablets in US now? Do they follow that?
Yeah, they're no longer recommended.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Actually, Dr. Kushalappa wanted to thank you, but I think he has got, though he's on with us on the platform, he has got some. I think the mic is not getting. Dr. Kushalappa, sir, you would like to say something? I think he's coming. Dr. Kushalappa, sir.
Thank you, Stefani, and it was a wonderful insight into the oral hygiene in pregnancy. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yep.
I'm sure you will make your, so in fact, me and Dr. Kushalappa were talking that during your last visit, you were here and we visited the hospital. That time he was telling us, why don't you go for an MOU and take forward some research projects. So anyhow, we are looking forward, as we will talk to you about that in future shortly.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I hope we have not taken your time. As you said, you have a patient to attend at 9 o'clock.
Yes.
Have a safe journey, and thank you. Thank you again on behalf of.
Thank you. So nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. Yes, Dr. Anita. There is still a lot of participants waiting for the most awaited information. Yeah. Would you like to share the slide? All the participants in the morning session, I would say the judges have had a tough time, because all of them were chosen already and they were in the top 20. So congratulations to come into the top 20 from the total submissions. So all of you will be getting the top 20 will get top 20 most probably with the position, and the awards will go as we'll project the slide here. So congratulations to all the winners.
These 6 winners are from Pathways of Caries.
Yeah, I hope
and these are the selected from Pathways of Oral Hygiene.
And for the Pathways for Oral Hygiene, 2 of them have got So congratulations to both session participants. And the winners will be, the top winners who will be communicated through email. You have a special offer of coming to JSS, SIG Dental Cariology. And the training is for having hands-on experience on quantitative light fluorescence imaging, so which can be utilized with a convenient time for mutually for both to the winner as well as the institution, preferably within the next maybe we can see the time period because of the present situation. We may extend the time. So we'll see. We'll be in touch. Definitely, you can think of extending, asking for an extension of a time period. So congratulations again to all of you. And Dr. Kushalappa sir is there. I think Dr. Kushalappa sir was supposed to do the honors of. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir. So we just announced the awards for the winners of the poster sessions just now. So. I hope all of them have noted down the winners. Yeah, and they will be intimated through email also. A separate certificate will be issued. And
I was with them.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay, sir. Okay, sir. So we request you to give your vote of thanks to our international speakers. Deliver the vote of thanks to. And meanwhile, I would like to thank my team, especially from Special Interest Group, Dr. Paras, Dr. Shanbog, Dr. Pratibha, Sumanna, Dr. Balasubramaniam, sir, and Vice Chancellor particularly because he had insisted that we have to do something like this. We have been working with all the international faculty in the research front. You should organize a program something like this and come out with some kind of platform where you can take JSS and India forward in the global map. So thank you all of you, and a special thanks to Dr. Anita, who is undertaking a project under SIG Cariology. Not one project, many projects actually. Thank you, Dr. Anita.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I thank also Dr. Kushalappa sir for his valuable support all the time and encouraging and carrying forward. And my thanks to Pro-Chancellor and Chancellor who have always been supporting in conduct of these type of programs. Thank you all. See you again in future from SIG Cariology. We are intending to have many more programs which are value-based and learning and where learning never ends. Thank you. Have a good day and stay safe. We can close the session. Thank you. Thank you, Sumok. I forgot to thank you. Thanks a lot for all that arrangements.
All the participants who took encouragement and they have taken their spend the time and send the posters on a very short notice. So I thank all the participants of the poster, the external panelists who have been there for us with us throughout the day. Thank you all.